come join our team. Just in case you want to know about us, we are Beaver Politics. We are on the Beaver Network. We are for the people, by the people. We are on 7 nights a week. And this is Truth Through Discourse. And we are a group of Canadian creators that came together to create honest and truthful left-leaning content in Canada and try to show some of the good that's actually being done, try to get through kind of the chaos that we're seeing in Canada together and start supporting each other. And the one thing is, Beavers, we really want to get out there is we really want you to vote. So that's awesome. You got out and voted. I love that. Really, really important. Wondering. Trying to get my phones close together, but not be too close together. For when the other candidate gets here. I think we should play that drinking game again. That was really fun last night. Who had fun with the drinking game? Show of hands. Hey, Missy, how you doing? We got Panda in the house. We got Missy. We got Danju. Who else is here? Rosa, how you doing? Happy's in the house. Hey, Whitney, how you doing? Panda. Prairie Princess, my girl. Okay. We're getting ready. Tap, 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 tap. Get that out of there. I think I should get those shooter glasses and for any of those slogans. I think that would be really funny. I think that would be really, 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 really funny. And I have really pretty ones, don't you think? So I'll have one for him, and I'll have one for me. And whenever we see a troll that does like a slogan, so it could be like PP for PM, come up with some other slogans. Help me along, my friends. Come up with your favorites. And whenever we see them, and anybody can play along at home. If you're not somebody that enjoys a beverage in the evening, you can most certainly use apple juice or water. And we can go from there, right? And so every time they say, we see in the comment section, anything that's like a slogan from the right, we will have a drink. So I'm going to fill my first one up right now. You got to meet the PM today? Get the heck out. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. That's amazing. That's what. I think Happy will play along with me. That's really, really cool, Elbows Up. That's really exciting. That's great for you. I bet his security is wonderful. I bet he's a really nice man. Like, I just feel like that. You can call me daddy, 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 daddy. No. Oh, is this like a Catholic thing? Did you give it up? Or it's like you don't have to tell me either, Happy. It's none of my business. Good handshake. That's a strong piece. I've got that song every time I think about Mark Carney. I've got that song in my head. You can call me daddy, 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 daddy. I can't get that sound out of my head. That's a really good one. That's great. I think though, like as we just remain excited, we keep each other safe, we work really hard to get the Liberals elected by going strategic voting, by the way. That's how we do it. Strategic voting. Stick to that piece. Smartvoting.ca. I'll go ahead and throw a plug out. JB Politics, I believe, right now is going like every night live for the rest of the election. So if you want to know more, he's really great. I usually see him popping up around that 8 o'clock time. So watch out. Watch out for him and pump it out, because that's what you're seeing. And not everybody's happy about smartvoting.ca, and that's more their problem than it is anybody else's problem. It's a great app that was created to keep ABC out, and I'm really impressed with it. The way I see it, it's gonna take, if we can pay attention and use it and quit arguing about it, it can take us far. Right now, I see a little bit of some of the left eating its face on this piece, and it's really, really, really disappointing. That's not something we got to learn from the Americans and what they did. And what the Americans did was they ended up working against their own best interests, and that's how they got Trump in. And there's nothing that's going to save them now. There's nothing that's going to save them now. They have to go through this whether they like it or not. And that's really, 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 really scary. And I'm not happy about it at all. But we have to learn some lessons from our brothers and sisters. And we use smartvoting.ca to vote. And if your area is orange and it's NDP, vote NDP. If your area is mostly red, then you get on that red wagon and you put it on. And you fight for smartvoting.ca. Yeah, I feel like the same too. I'm going to add up a few guests for a little bit for conversation. And when my guest leaves, I will, I'll break it down a little bit after that. Hey, Angry Ginger.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I'm all right.
Right on. Hello, Polly Chick. How are you?
I'm good. Just editing some videos or trying to.
Hey,
Yeah,
Polly.
I saw a bit of your live today. It was good.
Hi, Angry Ginger. And Radical.
Hey
And
there, everybody.
Where's the mister? What happened?
the Mister, which Mister?
He was Mr. Radical, wasn't he?
Yeah,
I'm
where
right
did he
here.
go? I think he just dropped it along the way somewhere. So what did you think of the debate last night, everyone?
I actually missed it. I fell asleep, unfortunately, but I
Okay.
got clips of it.
Any thoughts on what you've heard so far?
It hasn't changed my mind at all, and I think it probably hasn't changed most people's minds. I think everyone's sticking with, who they were going to vote for before.
Okay, I forgot to ask, just for TikTok purposes, can you state your age, please?
Yeah, over 40.
Over 40, excellent. And do you want to share which way you're voting?
I'm voting ABC.
PC? Okay.
No, ABC. ABC.
ABC. Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Radical?
everybody has pretty much
Just cutting
made
out.
up their minds, and I think only a fringe percentage are people that are still swayable.
I think you're right. Polychick?
I'm old.
You're older than 18.
Yeah, and I'm voting strategically, I think, this time.
Excellent, excellent. Frontline?
Hello. Sorry for being late, but I was out voting today.
You voted,
And the
right?
lineups, yeah, and the lineups are pretty big. Like, I am honestly kind of worried about election day because if the advanced polling, we had to wait that long. But they're doing a bunch of new like security features, so it's taking a little bit longer than usual because of how they've set it up. But yeah, just be mindful. I wanted to tell that to everybody that like if you don't want to wait forever in a lineup, I would highly suggest that you go vote this weekend versus waiting for the 28th, because I'm pretty sure that if I waited an hour and something today, then the actual voting day, people are going to be waiting like 6 to 7 hours. So
I'm going to get everybody to mute themselves just because we're getting a lot of background.
but yeah, so go out and vote this weekend if you can, guys, just to make sure that you're not stuck waiting forever.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the tip. Are you just getting
You're
back
welcome.
in now?
Yeah, I had to go get my cat food right after, and so it took a little bit longer, but I just got home.
Meow.
Oh yeah, you can hear him in his litter box right now. So I'm going to mute myself while he does that. And I'll let you guys talk.
Thanks.
Happy
We're all apes. How are you? Oh, sorry.
I'm good. You?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
No problem.
How you feeling about the debate last night?
I think there was a lot of attacking on Carney from Pierre Poilievre. Like he didn't aim his questions at anybody else. So I feel like it was almost a gang up on Carney. I think Carney did really well. Hopefully it was enough to sway the vote.
I think I agree with you. It did really seem like a gang up, right? Like in the back alley, like they were just coming at him from every side. He could barely breathe, and they were on top of him.
I mean, he couldn't stop with his quote there of, the 10 lost years of liberal government. He kept going back to that and not providing
It's
his
funny.
own policy.
It's funny that was said because the guy asking the questions pointed out that that the country hasn't had a balanced budget in 17 years, and Trudeau's only been only in power for 9 of those years. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
the last time we had one was right before Harper.
Count
before Harper, or just
slogans.
at the beginning of Harper.
Frontline, go ahead.
He asked a question though, and I wasn't answering the question. So
Oh,
if
sorry, I
anybody
didn't
else
hear
wants
the
to answer it first.
Ask the question again, please.
All right, whatever. I'll just talk then. I was doing a tally last night. Now, obviously, we were playing a little bit of a drinking game there every time you said a slogan, so I might have messed it up. But I counted 33 slogans.
33. That's a lot.
33.
He also had the most, I heard they fact checked him, and he told the most lies.
Of course. I mean, that was is that a surprise to anybody? Like, I think that the NDP, the Bloc, even though they kind of gung up on Carney a bit, they weren't lying.
I think it says a lot when you refuse to have media travel with you. You clearly don't want to be fact checked.
You don't. You don't.
Well, come on, guys. Let's also talk about like the elephant in the room, which is Rebel News, because what they did was a strategic move so that Pierre would dodge the scrum questions after the English debate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say that about Rebel Entertainment. Yeah, anyone taking them as a news organization has lost their mind. I mean, I took journalism 20 years ago in Alberta, and when they were telling us about different places to work, they said if you want to be taken seriously as a journalist, you do not go to Rebel.
Right? Polyachik, do you want to get in here?
I think Rebel News basically caused them to just overshadowed everything. Like, just it took over everything, so that the debate, wasn't even what was talked about the most. What was talked about the most was Rebel News and what they did. The debate was hardly even talked about, and I'm a little bit disappointed with Jagmeet and how much he interrupted. I think Carney did really well, and Pierre Poilievre, it was almost like they were all on top of Carney. Ow.
They fear him, right? He's their biggest competition, so they just, it was like an attack. There are other words I can think of to say that, but they're super inappropriate. So, an attack.
I don't think he was their biggest competition. I think he was the only competition.
It's
Well, that's just
understandable
a-
when you see
I think
someone that.
yeah, go ahead, Angry.
Sorry, when you see somebody that absolutely flipped the polls in 1 month, that's got to be absolutely petrifying to all the other parties. You know how far you are behind when it's taken this guy 30 days to absolutely, have a 35-point switch.
Right?
And I think for any discerning watcher, I think one of the things that stood out to me is that the lines that the Conservatives went in with were no different than the lines that they've been using all along, which means that as far as they're concerned, the game plan hasn't changed, even though the competitor that they're competing against has changed. So what it really tells me with the Conservatives is they essentially have nothing.
Yeah, well, look at even how long it took for them to go from, the F Trudeau flags to the F Carney flags. I mean, that was less than 24 hours and those were available. So they're relying on hatred. They're not relying on policy. They just want to create hatred and a divide and make you hate somebody to not vote for them rather than make them like you and vote for you.
They're
It's
literally
almost-
giving the
Go
they're
ahead.
literally giving the old school Conservatives a seriously bad name.
Absolutely.
They're using this like a franchise. The playbook is like a franchise, and I think that's what Harper did when he went into the House after he was unelected. He went to the Trump White House and kind of weaseled his way through the back door, and they had this big conversation, and I think it's been the game plan all the way along. I think that's why the flags were ready so quickly. And they're always ready. And I think I remember just before COVID, all of those players that we see online that are like Maple Mega, like the big ones, like the redheaded fella, and there's a couple of other fellas. I just don't want to name their names, but I saw them and they were holding signs in Calgary about complaining about work and protesting. And then I saw them up in Cranbrook, BC, and they were protesting. And like, this has been a buildup. Like, they're what we call political actors. And they're bad political actors and they have bad intentions. And they've been trying to spread this for the past 5 years. And they're
Longer than that. It's been longer than that.
It has, but in Canada specifically.
No, I know. I'm saying even in Canada, it just wasn't front page news. It wasn't in our faces, but it was going on underground in a bunch of different, secret group chats and all kinds of, internet spaces that weren't as popular as they've become today. But it was happening since the first Trump win because I was seeing it. That was seeping over here already back in 2015, 2016. So it was here. It just wasn't as amplified. And everybody looked at them as the fringe minority. Everybody ignored them. And then they became a visible You know what? We can't even call them a fringe minority anymore. They're 30% of our population now. So they're not a fringe minority. And when people say that, oh, don't worry about them, they're just a fringe minority. No, we should worry about them because they are 30% of our population.
Yep.
But they even don't agree with each other. I mean, they fight with each other all the time. They can't agree on anything.
What I want to see is how they're going to justify Pierre saying that he's going to support Ukraine financially when all of them are against us supporting Ukraine and giving them any help. So it was really odd that he would say that, but he obviously said that because he knew who watches the debates, because these guys don't watch the debates. They watch X feeds, Facebook feeds. They watch only their own little circles, but he knew that a lot more undecideds were going to be watching the debate. So he said what he thought he needed to say in order to get their votes. But that whole platform has run on not supporting and not funding anything for Ukraine. So I'm really wondering like how they're going to take that if any of them did watch it. But again, I highly doubt any of them did watch it.
I don't think they care. I remember when the build up to the war of the Ukraine, and it wasn't long after the Liberal government had won that election. And I remember them just, Trudeau didn't say anything, or not Trudeau, sorry. Pierre Poilievre said nothing. Like there was no messaging for they just acted like they went along. And then slowly it was like, why are we giving our government money away? It was about 2, maybe 3 weeks after the war started. And then you started this buzz of why are we giving all our money away? Why are we sending it to there? I don't agree with that.
No, that's the thing is they don't understand that we're part of NATO and that we are required to give money. It's not us giving money away.
Doing it for our own safety. Like we're trying to help them because if they lose and Russia decides to invade a NATO country, then that pulls us all into a giant war. And we don't want that. Like we're protecting our own people and we're protecting democracy by helping them. Not to mention, it doesn't make your taxes go up or anything like they think it does. Like all of a sudden Putin invades Ukraine and your taxes went up. No, that's not how it freaking works, dude.
No, it's already built into the defense budget.
Exactly. And it's silly when they're like, well, we should be taking care of people at home before we take care of people elsewhere. It's part of our defense budget. That money isn't going to public programs anyway. Not to mention, they don't even want public programs. So they're hypocrites.
I've tried explaining that so many times, and it's like it literally goes one ear, hits a wall, and back out the other ear.
So I gotta shoot a glass.
Usually goes.
Well,
I'm
America
actually,
is easy. Sorry, go ahead.
Anytime.
I'm just going to say, I'm actually kind of anticipating if the Liberals win, how they're going to react.
I actually just made a video about this on my page, and I told everyone, like, we have to take the high road here if we win, because they will most likely end up becoming very angry, and that anger could lead to violence. It could lead to all sorts of issues, maybe our own kind of wannabe version of January 6th, who knows, but we need to be... But exactly, right? So we need to make sure that we're not adding fuel to that fire, right? And we need to make sure that, like, we celebrate our victory, but we celebrate it with grace, we celebrate it nicely, we celebrate it with ourselves, but we don't need to, shove it down their throats and push it in their face and make all kinds of mean videos, because that's not going to help anyone, right? That's only going to add fuel to the fire. We got to be mindful, and we got to prepare for the worst, just in case.
I'm kind of hoping that's the end of it for my TikTok stuff for politics if they win, but hey, you never know.
On that
I'll
note,
tell you, it's not over.
Oh no, I know that. But
we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to get everyone except for Frontline to drop right now. And then I'm going to introduce my friend, Reggie. And we're going to have, if you want to stay on, you can, but just keep your mics off. And we won't cut in at all except for Frontline, because she'll be part of this interview. And you guys can just keep tapping. Sharing is caring. Get this out to the FYP. Thank you all for coming. This is the Beaver Network, and you're at Beaver Politics, and we really appreciate you showing up tonight. Normally it's debate night, But tonight I have a good friend of mine, Reggie Goldsberry, and he's our Liberal candidate. And I'm really excited to welcome you.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here. What
Thank you for joining
fun
us.
experience.
Right? These are my friends. This is where I spend a lot of my time. And you're going to see them all. They're all going to come up. Reg he's a busy guy. He's a candidate. So he's not on TikTok all the time, right? So we're going to introduce him to the TikTok world and he's going to share a little bit and we're going to have this conversation. Feel free to message us some conversation or questions in a few minutes and we'll try to answer them all. Okay. And Reg, I got you a little something. Everybody, I need to get your drinks ready. Get your apple juice ready. Whatever it is you're going to, pour it in your little shot glass. And every time we see somebody pop up a slogan in the comment section, and we know what those slogans are, we're going to pop a little something to whet our appetites. Okay? And we'll start with that. Reggie.
Did you hear the new slogan that Morrison came up with yesterday at the debate?
No, what is it?
Because they've evolved Canada is broken to Canada is weak. Which we are not weak. We are united. We are standing together. We are going to stand up to Donald Trump. We are going to stand up for health care. We are going to stand up for affordability. The Mark Carney Liberals understand that we do that through conversation, bringing you to the table and hearing what needs to happen. That isn't weak leadership, you know.
That's why I have you at the table tonight. And that's why we're having a kitchen table conversation. So let's talk about a little bit about where you come from. I know I've met you. We've known each other now for a few years.
A few years now, yeah.
You're a Kootenai boy.
I am a fourth generation Kootenai boy. I love where I get to call home. I was born and raised in the Cranbrook, Kimberley area. I went through the Kimberley school system, ended up graduating here in Cranbrook. I went to Selkirk College to get a business diploma and ran a rural hospitality business, understanding the challenges of running a small business in a rural environment. And then I came back to school back in 2019 and got a Bachelor's of Business Administration specializing in sustainable development. If you go to my website, votereggie.ca, you can see my 2022 research project, Sustainable Kootenai Columbia, where there's over 200 calls to action that you can see for sustainability directly in our region here. I take this very seriously, and everything. I'm using this campaign to start the next phase of the research project, making it where we can know what others are speaking of through all of our communities, and we're going to present that to the government. We're going to present it to the Mark Carney Liberals. We're going to present it to the Liberal Party of Canada, and we're going to make it where our region is at the governing table, because lots of people have great ideas, but where's Rob Morrison? Where is the action we need? I had a great saying at the debate last night. I said, squeaky wheel gets the grease. And when I'm MP, I'm going to be doing a lot of squeaking.
And you have a long history with the Liberal Party. Like, you didn't just show up yesterday.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with people that are getting out and volunteering now. But how was it, like 15, 17 you started with the Liberal Party somewhere in there?
I started in about 2012, 2013 with the Liberal Party. I started going to the Victoria convention that we had. That was a lot of fun, where I realized that the Young Liberals was a group that actually has the authority and the power to have change within the party, because we need to represent all demographics. It's not just children. We need seniors. We need women. We need the 2S LGBTQI community. We need our friends from all of our communities to understand that these discussions don't happen in silos. The Liberal Party is very broad. We want to hear from you. And, you know, maybe under our last leadership, discussions didn't go far enough, or they went too far. And so Mark Carney, as an experienced economist, he's coming here to fix our economy, to make it where we're not cutting unnecessary spending, which is a very unfavorable term, because we have a lot of vulnerable populations within our communities that we can't just go and cut this money. So we have to look at what we're doing, grow our economy, make sure that the operational costs of our industries are going down. But most importantly, we need to protect our vulnerable populations, which includes our families and includes many people that are close to us. And how we do that, honestly, is discussion, bringing people to the table. Ottawa seems very far away. And what your MP can do, and I want to do this through a centralized portal, riding specifics so you can know exactly what grants and entitlements you have. We're going to use modern technology like AI so you can know what you can apply for. You can jump through the hoops. You shouldn't need a social worker to navigate the complexities of the federal government. We should have a frequently asked questions section on that portal. We should make it where you know that you have lots, because we spend lots, tens of millions of dollars within our riding. But our MP isn't going to speak about that. So I want to make it so everybody here on this call can know what they're entitled to and make sure that they're getting it.
What was your first opportunity to create change? And what did that look like?
Okay, so this is great. So under the Young Liberals, I was at the which convention? This was the Winnipeg convention, I believe it was, and I got to submit policy for the Trans-Pacific Partnership and how we needed to follow up on these agreements to make sure that they weren't being passed confidentially, like behind closed doors. So we got to pass policy as the Young Liberals to make it where we would talk more about the policy. We would make sure that it's actually going to benefit Columbia, Kootenay, Southern Rockies. And I am super proud to be able to, as a youth, youth being up to, 25 years old in the Liberal Party. So I was probably about 22, 23 at the time. And we're passing policies that are making it where the Liberal Party is being accountable. Our government of Canada is being accountable for the trade agreements. No other party offers opportunities like the Liberal Party. And so it's nice that they invited me in. I'm inviting everybody on this call in. We need to get more involved in government because these are serious conversations.
And are you married to any one idea? Are you looking to bring people to the table to kind of create that change?
Yeah. Change doesn't happen in silos. Change happens when we bring people in, when we talk about it. Any policies that we're putting forward, you should be brought to the table. It's crazy. For so many years in government, we've had an MP that could have been at the committee level, could have been talking to us, but that hand wasn't reached out to me. That hand wasn't reached out to you.
Haven't seen the person in our riding. I saw him once during the last election. I never saw him here again.
No.
I don't know that person truly lives in the space where they live. I know that there's an address attached to that individual, but I have good friends in Vancouver that area in and around that see that individual more than I would in this riding. So that's a struggle for me because I'm looking for representation. I work in the unhoused community. So we need that representation. I know a lot of Canadians are looking for that representation.
Our last MP has really eroded trust within the government. We should have representation of someone who's proud to live within our riding. I've heard many rumors, and I could speak towards other things that I've heard of our MP, but when it comes down to it, we need to rebuild that trust. That trust comes with having conversations like we're doing here today. That trust comes by inviting you to the table so we can discuss these issues properly. And I take a real initiative between communication and sustainability within our area to make sure all the policies that are passed are can be good for the long term. I have 4 children and young children, and I look at them and they have such an opportunity. There's so much good, but we worry about slogans and
How old is your youngest?
My youngest is turning 3 here on the 27th.
Wow,
27.
I remember when your wife was pregnant. Oh my goodness, that happened so quick, doesn't it?
It's crazy. My oldest is turning 9.
Wild.
Yeah, no.
And so when people say things like when I hear this, and I have heard this, they're gonna say he's too young. He's just too young. He doesn't have The je ne sais quoi. What I think, anyways, when I hear that is I'm excited about new blood. I'm excited about somebody new at the table. I'm tired of old mayonnaise.
And if,
I want new.
and if we keep electing the same mayonnaise, you get the same results.
Yeah, exactly. I want something a little better, a little fresher.
So for your viewers and everyone here, so I'm 34 years old and I have significant leadership experience. I have been
Oh, wait, lost 10 years of Liberal government.
you know, there's I got something to say about that one.
I'd like to introduce you to my partner in crime, Frontline Feminist.
Oh, Frontline Feminist, thank you for being here.
She is pretty fabulous. And feel free, Frontline, to pop in at any moment and ask some questions of Reg. We'd love you to be a part of the conversation.
I can start with asking a pretty hard question that I have for pretty much every single Liberal in our government. Also, I just wanted you to know that I voted today for a 25-year-old Liberal in my riding. So I am all for fresh blood. We need younger people in politics. So I'm super happy about that. All right, here's my tough question. How do you plan to counter the rising hate and extremism that we see in this country? Because we just don't see a lot of like forceful pushback from our government. They just kind of let it happen. And I know that that's one of like the hardest questions because I know how hard it is to say and do anything about it. But how do we move forward? If the Liberals do win this election, the extremism isn't just going to magically vanish, right? It's going to continue on that side. And it's really dangerous, right? We do not want to become like America in any way, shape, or form, but we're having a lot of this American style thinking and culture that's seeped into this country. What are we going to do about that?
Yeah, it's
Tough question. I know. I'm sorry.
Well, it's a real question though, because I would say 90+% of people are really good around politics. I can disagree with somebody, we can have a difference of opinion, but you know, we can still shake hands and ultimately be good people. But there's a small group, and you know, they're very loud, they're very vocal, it's a challenge, because how do you make it where a small voice ultimately doesn't be too intrusive? And I had a great conversation with some of our 2 SLBGTQI plus community in Creston, and you know, these small voices, there may not be many of them, but they're very loud. They'll get right in your face and have no problem, you know, calling you a pedophile or a libtard or, you know, whatever word of the week it ultimately is. And so, you know, a direct strategy when I deal with them is you have to call them out. Like a lot of people, oh, you know, I don't know if I can swear on here.
No,
but
well, yeah, I mean, you can.
Like-
Yesterday, was it, when was that debate where that man came right up to your face
Oh,
and you
yeah,
just,
in
he
Invermere.
just stood his ground and he was right up and he was yelling in his face and he was spitting and
But call out specifics. I mean, it's just like, where is your anger? Well, all the Liberals are terrible. And it's like, okay, what's the policy that makes you do that?
I do want to point out, though, one thing that, like, as a woman, that's sometimes harder because a lot of these people can get quite violent. And, like, I've had these experiences in person where I felt like physically threatened if I didn't walk away from the situation. And, you know, like that's a real thing. Like, I know that guys can stand up to guys and it's easier, but there's a big part of the community that has a much harder time really standing up to these people because we genuinely fear for our lives.
And that's a really sad state of affairs. You should not fear at all for having your opinion of anything. So, of course, in that situation, always make sure you are safe. And the best thing is to go away. I saw a great video just the other day of the best actions to do in a fight. And this was like a big military guy, big muscles, and he's all dressed up. He's like, this is what you do if you're ever into a fight and it's about to happen. And he just ran away. Like he literally, he just like big muscle guy, and he's woo. But so your safety's number one, and if that means that you have to just get out of that situation, let that person have their opinion. But if it doesn't escalate that far to where you literally have to remove yourself, call the people out on their BS, to be brutally honest, because sometimes they need to hear it. They hide behind a screen, and Freedom Fighter 43, who is part of the 1 in 5 conservatives that want to be annexed by the United States. I mean, okay, Mr. Freedom Fighter, let's talk this policy. And this is where the Liberals do very well. It's easy to bash, but realistically, we have the policies, we have the plan looking forward. Like in our comments here, PP the other in the debate, the last 10 years, Pierre Poilievre's looking backwards. Mark Carney, his plan, he's looking forwards. And when it comes down to Justin Trudeau, Justin who? He's gone. There were divisive issues like the carbon tax, which, I'm all for
Carbon who?
Well, and I'm all for carbon tax. It is a good incentive, but it was getting divisive. We can find other methods like building a bank account. So if you want to upgrade the windows in your house, you are able to pull directly from there. There are other incentives to get you to be accountable for pollution. The carbon tax was getting too divisive. So kind of like Justin Trudeau, he was getting too divisive. The Mark Carney Liberals are not the Justin Trudeau Liberals, and the Mark Carney Liberals are here to listen. So if we got Mr. Freedom Fighter here trying to go after someone and put them in an uncomfortable situation, call him out on the BS. Why are you being mean? What does that comment do that adds to the conversation? Because we need to have these conversations to grow it. And I want to bring Ottawa just a little bit closer to Columbia, Kootenay, Southern Rockies. I want to make it where the people here can rebuild their trust and make it where they know their MP has their best interests in mind. And I have the energy, I have the leadership experience, I have the knowledge. I want to draw everybody in, and that starts with a conversation.
And you knew you were getting what you were getting into, because we went through that last election where Maple Maga was starting to give birth and grow legs. And that was wild, because we had people walking into our office screaming,
spitting.
attacking, spitting at us. Like, we were like, whoa.
So can I ask a follow-up question then that kind of fits into that? Because at the end of the day, what fuels this is these extreme right-wing social media platforms like X. Facebook is going down that road. I mean, all you have to do is search Mark Carney on Facebook and the stuff you're going to get is atrocious, right? We have Rebel News, we have True North, we have all of these bad faith actors that are spreading conspiracy theories. And if we don't do something about that, it is going to be a continuing problem, and especially for young male voters that get pulled into this right-wing pipeline because of the sports that they watch, because of the fitness gurus that they listen to, etc. And we have to, globally, really, as you guys know, there's not that many true democracies left in the world. There's so many countries that have been taken over by extreme right-wing governments. And this is a global problem that we're facing. How do we regulate and control this media without, making people feel like they're losing their freedoms or something? But at the same time, we are letting just absolute blatant lies and conspiracies get spread like wildfire. I mean, it is mind-blowing to me how many people these days believe stuff that is absolutely untrue. Like the WEF stuff, right? Like, oh my God, how many times have we heard things about the WEF? Nobody knows what the IDU is, but everybody knows about WEF, and all they do is repeat it over and over and over and over again, and that becomes a danger to our democracy. That becomes a danger to our future.
It's like the Sustainable Development Goals from the United Nations. How dare we make things sustainable in this world so people can have food, or people can have access to clean water, or many of the other things that are so important.
But what can the government do? Because that's the question of the day, right? Like, what can the government do to mitigate some of the dangers that these platforms are contributing to?
So first off, we have to win the election. We being Mark Carney and taking on the United States, because if we have a soft approach to Donald Trump and this annexation, we're going to become the 51st state. And I reject that wholeheartedly, 100%. First off, we have to win this election. Second, we have bills like the Online Harms Act, which makes it where, you know, it's not, we have free speech, but free speech does not mean that you can devalue people or spread misinformation on a large scale. So what we do is we look at the acts and bills that we have access to. We bring our communities that are being marginalized or put to the side, like you brought up women and being threatened, put into threatening situations. We need to bring all of those to the table and see what can work. And one thing I found talking to people on the campaign trail here is Facebook got rid of all of their fact checkers and or Meta, I should say, Meta got rid of their fact checkers and the ability to censor information. And since then, this small group of people that are very vocal, calling people pedophiles or any of these swear words or all these, you know, F Trudeau or Carney or anything, we need to make it where they can understand that this is not acceptable behavior. You know, in society, like in our town, I have my kids, we walk around and, you know, it started with, you know, F cancer. Okay, sure, we can all agree nobody likes cancer, but it's a slippery slope that developed into, you know, F Trudeau, F Carney. For my children that I walk down the street when I'm taking them to the park, how about just swearing in public is not a good thing? Like, we shouldn't be we should have age appropriate material in public spaces. So what we're going to do with Mark Carney and our teams is we are going to be talking to the people who are most affected and understand specifically what is happening and make sure that we address this. And if we need to use our laws and the judicial system to follow through with it, and I'm saying we need to have a discussion around this, we need to follow through to protect these populations. It is unfair that we can have a discussion and someone like yourself can feel threatened just from having a conversation. We live in a free country. You can believe whatever you want, and I'm happy to stand to promote these conversations, to empower our groups that are struggling, but it comes down to conversation. So I'd make sure that the people who are most affected are brought to the table and that we lobby for those voices and empower them in Ottawa. So I that's the starting point. The solution I don't have directly, but I know where I'd start and how I'd address it.
Thank you for that. And yeah, you can already tell, you know, the conservative type of comments that we're going to face are going to be stuff like science is influenced by money. Who gets to decide what the facts are? Whose facts? Stuff like that, right? So that's going to be the hard part to combat, because a lot of these people believe that facts are subjective. But facts are facts. Facts are facts. They don't belong to anyone. They're just facts, right? Like, we know that the earth is round. I know, wild idea. But those are called facts. And some of us still believe in science. So hopefully we figure out a way to move forward, just because I think that's on a lot of our minds is, okay, cool, we're going to win this election, hopefully. But even if we win, we still have a really giant uphill battle in terms of the mis and disinformation that has now become a 24/7 part of our reality. And it's going to take education. Like, one of my biggest goals is I want to, you know, get involved in politics myself, because one of my biggest goals in life is to one day have free post-secondary education in our country, because that would make everybody so much better off. If people got free education, our economy would be better. People would be more informed. They would understand media literacy. Like, it could solve so many of our problems if we were able to just have, you know, free secondary education.
I spoke to that in one of our debates. We just came off a six debate circuit where we go around to all of our communities having a debate with the Chamber of Commerce, and I said that ultimately post-secondary education should be free. If you are, you know, contribute, especially if you're doing a good job, like if you get A's or B's, wherever that threshold would be, we'd have to find out. But post-second are the dollar value for how well an accredited degree is for an individual in our country related to the gross domestic product output is huge. So if we already got a good educated population, but if we can empower them, raise them up even more, that makes it where we're going to grow our GDP. You know, we can look at the different opportunities, but you also need an MP to bring those direct investments into our area as well. You brought up science and research, and I just had a call earlier today with National, and I guess with all the efficiency cuts that the Doge and all that are doing in the States, a lot of research and a lot of science has been cut, like completely cut. So all these scientists, all these researchers, they have no home. So speaking with National, what Mark Carney and his team are doing is we are streamlining the process. So these professionals are going to be coming into Canada. You know, the U.S. doesn't want research. They want to look backwards, like Pierre Poilievre looking at the last 10
U.S.
years.
doesn't want to lead. We will do it for them.
And we will 100%. And we must, we're obligated to, because we are a smart populace. We believe in science. We believe in individual rights. We reject the right wing rhetoric that comes out of the States. The liberals must win this election, because I really fear under Pierre Poilievre's cozy relationship with Donald Trump and respecting that kind of style of politics, like that's disgusting. That just makes me want to puke, like, bleh. Because we need to empower everybody. And I use that word a lot because...
Oh, wait. Liberals, 9 failed years. Thank you very much.
There we are. Cheers. And, but that's a backwards looking comment. Let's look forwards and what we need to do, because we have a changing economy. We need to protect what we have. We need to look at what is happening within our region and what projects can, you know, happen, like the Juanita expansion over in Trail, to make it where we can lower the operation costs of our main industries. Make it where all of those industries, Celgar, Mercer, Kolesnikov's Mass Timber, Sutco, they'll be able to get their products to market faster. So when Trump has his next hissy fit and makes the next line of tariffs come,
Tomorrow
or anything,
morning.
well, you never know. It's irrational. So we need to prepare our industries. We need to make it where we're not reliant on the United States. You know what we're going to do? We're going to exploit our biggest market. You know what the biggest market is that Canadians have? Ourselves. We have free trade agreements across the world, but we don't have free trade across Canada. By Canada Day, Mark Carney has already in March put the meeting together with the provinces. So they're going to present how we can tear down the interprovincial barriers and make it where we are going to have trade across Canada. We're going to be able to sell. We're expected to grow our GDP through this initiative alone between 10 to 14%. We are going to be adding thousands of dollars into every family's account, because we are growing our economy. When you grow the pie, each slivers that you have for every individual group grows. And that's why I have my portal idea, because we need to know what slivers you're entitled to, whether you're a senior, whether you're a family, you know, whether you're on fixed incomes or have challenges. We're here to help the people.
Okay. Oh, so sorry.
I could go on forever.
I want to keep you talking, but I want to jump on this moment here and say, if you're just joining in, this is the Beaver Network, and tonight you're getting a special Truth or Discourse episode on Beaver Politics Network with myself, Mrs. Radical, and Frontline Feminist, and we are hosting Reggie Goldberry, and he is a candidate for the Liberal Party.
And I'm really happy to be here. What a fun group. What a great setting. You here are asking the exact questions that we need to be talking about. And we need to make it where your groups can be heard, because as I said earlier in the podcast, Ottawa seems so far away. Our MPs that we have eroded trust. We need somebody with energy, somebody with resolve. But most importantly here, we need to preserve Canada, because the USA reiterated just the other day through the White House, the final plan for Canada is annexation. And that means we cannot have a soft approach. We need to take what we have and make it even greater, because no matter what agreement we sign, less than 1% of fentanyl comes through the northern border, so we need to have a national emergency. So the 2 years that we negotiated the CUSMA agreement, NAFTA 2.0, it means nothing. Throw that out the window. So that's no way to work. We can't work with an irrational country or leadership like the United States. And I got to preface this properly. We love Canadians. We love Americans. American people are great. We don't like your government. Your government is a POS. We need to be strong here, preserve our sovereignty. We need to leverage everything, like our critical minerals that come out of Trail, the oil that comes out of Alberta going to the States, the electricity from Ontario. We are going to be hard in every aspect to make sure we are preserving Canadian and Canadian culture and our institutions, because the flip side is we become a state, and those extremisms that permeate in the States that come over our border in little sections, we're not going to allow that. We are going to be standing up. And so I appreciate the opportunity to come here and speak towards it.
Do you have a question, Frontline? Do you want to follow up with another one?
I want you to relay a message back to all the other liberal leaders of this country. You guys really need to build a mis and disinformation task force and find a way to explain complex situations to people in a very simplified way. I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
Whenever we're at candidates forums, he gets out his pen, he gets out his book, and he's taking all of these ideas home with him.
Well, because so often, you can forget, or you have these conversations and they're great and we shake hands at the end and then the door shuts and that's literally where the conversation stops. And your member of parliament shouldn't operate that way. You bring something to me, I should follow it up. So you make sure you write it down. You make sure you understand it. And, when this actually gets to a committee level, Frontline, I want to come talk to you individually and been like, is this good enough? And that's what builds the trust. That's what makes it where more people want to get involved in politics and talking about things like mis and disinformation discourse and how we can actually solve these problems. It's huge, because if you have a big following and you're spreading information that ultimately leads to hate towards another individual, there's so much anger, much anger.
I think one of the big fears, I think myself and Frontline think about often during this time, we're part of the TikTok community for a long time, and we watch the buildup of January 6th happen right here on TikTok. We were threatened by other people. They were telling us they were going to do it. People were trying to get a hold of the RCMP. People were trying to get a hold of the FBI. People were like frantically, and you're just watching this disaster play out in real time. And we're all just hopeless and we're all really frustrated, because it's like we see all of this online first, before the politician sees it, before the police see it, before your parents see it. We're seeing it all. This is the Frontline almost. TikTok, right?
And I was going to say, kind of my specialty, since I've been involved in this since really 2014, 2015, has been pattern recognition. And I've been really, really good at predicting most of the things that have already happened. And what I wanted to say too, just to, address some of the comments here when they say, oh, liberals, all you guys have is just connecting PP with Trump. And it's like, no, we're connecting PP to the entire global right-wing movement. We're connecting it to, all of the other leaders that are playing by the same playbook. It's not just Trump. Trump is just the loudest and the, nastiest of them all. But Viktor Orban, Giorgia Meloni, Putin, there's a lot of other leaders that are using the exact same playbook. And because they're using the same playbook, it's something to fear, because I've been studying this playbook for years, and it is a very, very dangerous thing that a lot of people just don't have understanding. And that's why I said I think it would be incredibly intelligent to devote some resources to a myth and disinformation task force that could figure out what these lies are before they become super mainstream. Like, have a bunch of people that are basically constantly online. They're seeing what's being said. They're seeing what's being planned. They're infiltrating these right-wing extremist groups to see what exactly they're planning and get ahead of it, right? Be able to debunk it, be able to put together messages that debunk it in very simple language, because I think that's one of the biggest things that we have issues with is, the educated population. When we try to explain things to the regular average citizen, they don't really get it, or they get bored, or we use too many big words. So I've been really trying over the last little while to figure out ways to simplify what I'm saying, just so that it makes sense. Sorry, the motorcycles on the street are so loud.
Just something to point out on that quickly. that playbook is getting to a point that it's no longer working. I mean, look at what the Conservative Party did for over 2 years. The divisive, rhetoric that we were speaking of. We heard repeatedly, Canada is broken. We're not broken. And now it gets to an election. I don't think I've heard PP or Morrison or anybody say that. Although Morrison did have the continuation at the debate the other day. Oh, well, we are weak. And it's like, we're weak because as our member of parliament, you don't do anything. I had a great thing that I came up with at the last debate that I'm really proud of. So I brought up a squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so come the end of the debate where you get your last 3 minutes to speak, I thank you for the Chamber of Commerce for being here. Thank you to our moderator and everyone in the crowd. And thank you, Mr. Morrison, for your 6 years of service. Now it's time for energy and a lot more squeaking. So I had a great speech out of that I'm really proud of, because we do need to address, which patterns are happening, but we can have faith that that playbook isn't working like it used to, because once that playbook goes into action, which we saw with Mr. Trump in the States there, wow, we don't like this playbook very much. Maybe what we were told was not the way it is, because, we have thousands, tens of thousands of people losing jobs, retirees who have their retirement in stock markets or mutual funds,
veterans.
I mean, all that money has been eroded
Special
because the stock market's dropping. You want security for your retirement? We need a Mark Carney government. We don't need that right-wing extremism. We don't need that playbook, because that playbook makes our economy weaker. It makes our vulnerable populations, even more in a tough situation. And this is what we're here for. We're here to help people. We're not here to help big businesses. We're not here to, give big write-offs for everything. You hear about it online, but you're never.
Wait.
Oh.
Pierre, please save Canada.
Oh, please
Time.
no.
Sociable.
Oh, if you guys were going to be drinking every time, trust me, you missed out on a lot of opportunities already.
I'm only having a few of these little
We're
shots.
behaving.
But ultimately, I do think the portal idea, the riding specific portal, is something that can be spread all across Canada, because you can get the proper information on there so people know what the sources are. I was in an old folks' home, a retirement center, just the other day. And a lady came up to me. She was quite a religious lady. And she said, I was reading this article on CBC, and they're going to be cutting all the tax write-offs for our church, and we're not going to be able to be what we are. She had this whole story. And I looked at her and I said, this is a phishing article. It's a scam. They want you to press a link and put in all your little information. And I mean, we have to be always vigilant. But if I didn't tell her that, she could have lost more money, or she would have been not knowing the right information. So this portal makes it where anything that the federal government does, we will know where the right source comes from. We're not talking just some news source, which in Canada, most of our news comes from the United States.
And I'll tell you, I had a little bit of an experience. I walked into a space one day, and this person was screaming that the government was stealing their rights. Oh, wait a minute. It says, let's go back. It's a good question. How can you trust someone who doesn't have a security clearance to run our country? Great question.
A little bit of a divergence here, but why that is so important is that is a reactive response. And a reactive response with the United States is going to make it where we lose our country. We need to be proactive, like the reciprocal tariffs that Trump put on the whole world because of direct lobbying from the Mark Carney liberals in red states. That went to the Senate. And in the Senate, they voted 51-48 to make it where Canada would be exempt. When we have a reactive response like what Pierre Poilievre does with his security clearance, I would expect our official opposition to know exactly what's going on in our government, and especially if you're going to be prime minister, what he's going to become prime minister and then be briefed on all these issues that need to be talked about. No, we need to be proactive, and Mark Carney is the most proactive that we have, because he may have been an advisor, but he comes with a significant resume and experience.
I feel like his approaches are going to be analytical. Yeah. Right? Like they're going to be well thought out, analytical approaches. They're not going to be impulsive.
they're not going to be a politician.
Yeah.
You know, people could argue Justin Trudeau is a politician. You know, he's had other jobs. But I can assure you unequivocally, Pierre Poilievre's never had another job. He knows nothing other than playing politics.
Yeah.
You have someone like Mark Carney come in. He gives us hope because, wow, you have actually dealt with crisis before, like the '08 recession or
true.
Brexit.
And actually, that's really what got me interested in Mark Carney was, you know, he can speak liberal math, but he can also speak mega math. And that is really important to read between the lines of everything and bringing it to the middle and kind of being able to deal with both of those groups.
Yeah.
I thought, I mean, he had an endorsement from Stephen Harper. You know what I mean? He had an endorsement from Jim Flaherty. He has an endorsement from from the British. Like,
Well,
it doesn't get better. The king.
You know why Mark Carney refused to be the finance minister for the Conservatives, right? He refused because he said, I can do it better. I disagree with your divisive politics and how you're trying to change Canada. I want to get in and make it better for everyone. And if you read his book...
And they didn't want that.
Well, of course not, because it speaks against their narrative. They want him under control.
I also want to just slide back a little bit to this. Just really quickly on this security clearance piece. And I want to side back to this because it doesn't ever really get touched on. Why? Because he'll sit there and he'll go, well, I was clear like 10 years ago when I was with this government. I mean, I have kind of a lower level of security that I have to get as a human service worker because I work with vulnerable individuals.
Yeah.
And every year I have to have that done, regardless. So how often would a government worker have to have that done? Nearly as well, I would assume.
I would hope, if not
so
more.
so him saying that, you know, I had it done 9 years ago really just says to me that he doesn't even keep up on his due diligence on the things he needs to do right now and in this moment, because he should have had one every year of those 9 years to keep it accurate. And like Mark Carney said, it took him like 3 weeks?
It doesn't take long, and what Pierre Poilievre is doing is playing politics. I can't say, but I have definitely heard that the country of India and how their government has contributed to the Conservative campaign has played a role in why Pierre Poilievre does not want to get his security clearance, because as soon as he gets that clearance, he has to be held by confidentiality, which, because he doesn't have that, he's able to play politics and go into his right-wing channels and yak, spread this mis and disinformation. And that's
shady in-laws.
Oh, of course. And it's unacceptable, completely unacceptable. Mark Carney is going to toss that rhetoric out from our government completely. We're going to focus on our economy. We're going to focus on vulnerable populations. We're going to bring homes, new homes, build tons of them. Like we've built tons of homes, but they're all 2,000, 3,000 square feet. They're massive. Whatever happened to the 700 to 1,200 square foot home?
Liberals have been infiltrated by China.
Wow. Well, I got a few opinions on that one. What about all the donations from the Chinese government that have infiltrated into the Conservative Party? Again, I have heard many things about the reasons why Pierre Poilievre doesn't get his security clearance is to do with the Chinese Communist Party or the government of India. It would be interesting to actually open up the books and see, let's find out where there potentially could be fraud or more mistrust that could be built into it. And Pierre Poilievre just sidesteps that. That's why he doesn't get the security. And those are excellent questions of why we ultimately need to elect smart minds in the government who can ask questions, not afraid to raise their hand and say, excuse me, I don't think this is right. We need to do better for our riding.
And not afraid to work with people to get the job done.
Your member of parliament is glue. We go through so many different levels. We work with so many different levels of government. Our provincial counterparts, our regional, municipal counterparts, making sure that, and there's so many grants and so much opportunity in there. People say the government doesn't do anything. Well, it does lots. What the government doesn't do is it doesn't tell you what you actually are entitled to, and that makes it where that money doesn't get spent. And I want to make it where everybody in our riding, Columbia, Kootenay, Southern Rockies, can have a better standing, because affordability is tough. Even just renting a home, $1,500, $2,000, it is so expensive here, and we are finding methods to make it where we are addressing these problems head on within our communities. Your MP, myself directly, I'm going to work with our regional counterparts to make it where we can have variances on our water and septic, where we're growing the infrastructure in the town so we can have multiple hookups onto one line. We're going to have it for seniors, where we can have housing developments. Say there's 30 different homes, and in the center you have a common area where care workers can live. And then you can have seniors still living in a community and not have to worry about going directly into a home. There's things that we're doing like this for families as well. And for these developers, where does the money ultimately come from? Well, we are going, the government is going to get back into the business of house building. We are going to underwrite these projects similar to CMHC and what we do for housing and mortgages. Because if the money is there, and the money will ultimately be paid back over the life of the loan, we can make it where these developments can work. But the MP needs to work with your regional and municipal counterparts mostly, but also some provincial in there as well, to make it where we actually have these projects happen. Because there's tons of land. It's just slow because it sits on the province's desk, or takes 2 years to get a building permit from your city.
You're doing a really good job.
I'm passionate.
It's like you lived on TikTok with us all this time. So what do you think if we open the box and have some people come up?
Yeah.
And have some conversation.
Yeah, please. I'd love it.
Are you comfortable with that?
I love discussion. I
Okay.
really do.
So if anybody wants to have a conversation or have any questions, pop up. Frontline, do you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add in to everybody that's chirping about China nonstop in the comments. Harper was the one that signed a 31-year deal with China, and there's nothing we can do about it because Harper signed it. Just FYI. So we're stuck with it. So if you want to blame somebody for working too closely with China, maybe look at your own side.
Hi,
Pierre
Happy.
Poilievre was a senior advisor in that cabinet as well.
It's true.
Facts. And if anybody else wants to come up, come on up. Do you have any questions, Happy?
You know that Pierre Poilievre is Trump down in the comments as a question. He said, okay, I would ask about accessing the portal because my CRA and MYGCA are separate systems.
So I would have to learn.
I do have a question when the time comes.
I would have to learn about the CRA, because when we're talking about our finances and your SIN number and things like that, we're getting into complex issues. So I'd have to learn a bit more about that. I don't know if I would think that would be included in this portal, but what this portal would be a low barrier, easy access to information about the riding. Say you're a family and you're not maximizing your Canada Child benefit that you have for your children. Often you have to make a phone call, sit on the phone for multiple hours to get this question. Why don't we have a frequently asked questions section related to our riding so you can jump through these hoops? What it is currently is you have to get a hold of our Member of Parliament's office, and if you're one of the fortunate ones that they'll actually get back to you, then you deal with the issue, which is, again, a reactive approach. We must be proactive, and that's why this portal needs to be easy access. So I don't know if we'd include the CRA directly. We could have conversations about that and possibly grow it into there, but the idea of this portal is to make it where the information that the government has that's related directly to our riding, and we'll spread this against all the ridings across Canada and make it where you can know what the government, what you're entitled to from the government.
And when you don't know, you don't know. So like, for example, when my son was aging out, like becoming an adult, I called child tax benefit and I said, my family is aging out. There's been times where we have worked for somebody else, but there's been times where we worked for ourselves. So I just want you to do like a little, what is that, an analyzation of our account or an audit of our account, and just tell me, do I owe you money in the end? Am I going to be free and clear? And, by the end of the conversation, he said, lady, you hit the lottery today. How did you know to have this call? And I was like, what are you talking about? I'm just asking. I got $7,000 that day. That the government over time, I had just, because my husband was oil and gas, we did our own taxes. There's some things we didn't know, and then benefits and just different things like that over the year that we didn't take advantage of, I guess, so that was a fantastic piece of information to get and be able to utilize. It took me a long time to get to that point though.
And I think we can all agree it is time that the government modernized so much of its approach of what it does, because it should not take a long time to achieve what you're talking about here.
Right, when he turns 18.
And think of all
That's a little bit way too late. I could have used that money, say, when he was in grade 10, you know what I mean? And pay for sneakers and all of those things.
No, we're going to fix all those problems, but we can't do it without Mark Carney, that's for sure.
So does anybody have any questions for Reggie? Hi, Panda.
Hi. I kind of have a question because I myself am a budding meteorologist. Do you know roughly what the plan is to, I guess, further develop like our more science-based fields, especially in terms of like climate and atmospheric sciences?
Yeah, so Environment Canada is really a world leader for a bunch of science and research. And what the federal government can do specifically is we need to streamline the process. So scientists and researchers across Canada, and even ones from foreign countries like the United States, which there's huge with all these programs being cut. We are making it where so many people want to come to Canada. So we're going to empower them through our agencies like Environment Canada so they can use their research and grow this discussion. So I think more money needs to be put into it. I think the grants that are available need to be better known. If you work for a nonprofit or any of the issues that are doing, this kind of research, make it where they can know what money is available for them, because we have hundreds of millions of dollars in grants between the different levels of government. So let's make it where the association or organization or even just private practice doing it yourself can be heard. So I'd support that. I think it needs more money. But again, the central theme you're going to hear a lot from me is communication. And how we do that is through the centralized program.
Great question, Panda. Happy?
Yeah.
Well, now we have through this dialogue, there's a couple of questions that seem to surface for me, and the first one would be, the carbon tax was an integral part of moving forward and having some kind of accountability as consumers, as producers, and importers as well. And we heard Mark Carney was doing away with that tax. Mixed feelings, of course, the divisiveness being evident over the last little while. Do you feel that that was a capitulation to populism, and perhaps maybe in the long term we will revisit some kind of carbon rebate system, carbon tax?
Yeah, it's not going to be long term. It's going to be short term. We are replacing it. We do have a plan. We're currently talking in the closed doors right now about a bank account that is, instead of every 3 months you getting a direct check from the government and spending that on what you'd want, which should be green initiatives, but make it where it can accumulate into a bank account which can compound. So if you have a project within your house, you would have the money to draw upon. But a big reason for getting rid of the carbon tax is it was getting very divisive. I support it 100%. It is a great way to incentivize people to be accountable for the pollution they have. And if you do use that, it makes it where the costs of the more environmentally appropriate way becomes closer. So there's great things to the carbon tax, but it was starting to get divisive. The conservative propaganda machine was getting very good at promoting how negative it was and how everything is more expensive. So it was taken out to be one of the biggest cues that Pierre Poilievre couldn't use for over 2 years. Axe the tax. Get rid of Trudeau. Those are two things that he can't speak about because
Carbon tax, Carney.
well, carbon tax. Carney got rid of the thing that you're going on. We took away a third of the platform for the Conservatives. Now, I support Green, and we are already talking in backdoor meetings of how we're going to be addressing this issue for Canada. And it really looks like what we're going to do is create a Green account that you can directly pull on for Green initiatives that will directly help you and your family. Now, we need to bring the people here to the discussion, to the table, to make sure that it's as comprehensive as it can be, because there's a lot of thoughts about, well, what if this type of window, say a vinyl window, is allowed, but a composite isn't? We need to talk to the people who are there to make sure we are having, or who are on the front lines.
Simplify it so it's not a difficult thing for people, you know. Yeah.
Because government shouldn't be hard, but it is hard. It's like recycling. Recycling should be very simple, because if it's simple, everyone will recycle. But you make it hard, you know, I know people that will just throw it right into the garbage. So let's make Green, let's make it great, let's make it where people want to, and you know, there's great initiatives other than just a carbon tax. But I think a big reason of that was to really yank a leg off of Pierre Poilievre and his campaign, because their whole campaign was Justin Trudeau bad and axe the tax. And you saw this in the debates. What does he have to say? He looks at the last 10 years. If you want a thing that we all cheers to is, oh, well, the last 10 years, we've everything was terrible. I'm not going to tell you about what the next 10 years are going to be like, because I don't have a plan, but I can tell you the last 10 were bad.
And he was intimately involved in making that last 10 years terrible by making the deal with China, by shutting down all of our federal housing and selling it off. Like,
You know,
it's painful to hear him say those things
So
when
you
you
wanna
know
hear something really
he was the
painful?
architect.
Here's something really painful. So we get public filings of our leaders and, you know, the different stocks that they own. And, you know, it's interesting. Pierre Poilievre owned a lot of stocks in the United States, which he recently sold. And after he sold these stocks, he's starting to propose, you know, let's have these capital gains tax exemptions. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, so you just sold a ton of stocks. You want to have capital gains exemptions this election. How much money are you saving because you're a crook?
He's so dirty. He's so dirty. He leaves a ring around the bathtub. That guy.
Ring around the toilet. Like,
So
come on, let's do
follow-up
it.
question to that, and I appreciate the answer. I was a big supporter of the carbon tax as well. Did you say you're from British Columbia?
I'm from Cranbrook, British Columbia. Yeah.
Okay, so you might have a good way of articulating this, but the weather impacts on British Columbian crops, you know, that were exacerbated through climate change. You know, what was the cost of that, and can that be used to illustrate the urgency of having a quote unquote green slush fund, where we can help people recover from those kinds of incidents? You know, Alberta had all those droughts. British Columbia had the grapevine issues, and you know, there's a lot that we can really point to that state that the grocery store prices are in fact caused by weather changes. You know, is there some way that you can kind of describe for us, you know, how that is going to be impacted through new policies?
A lot of the infrastructure that we have that feeds our families is at threat from climate change. There's no joke. If you think the climate has the climate's changing all the time, but if you truly deny that the climate has never changed and everything that we have is going to be the exact same, that's just naive, because we can see through science the significant changes that have been happening. And you brought up the cold snap for the grapes here. There are businesses within our riding that were affected by that. There was $70 million, I believe, between the federal government and the provincial government to help a bunch of them regrow between the Okanagan and here. And that's going to make it where in the future we can be strong, because we're going to have new grapes and different ideas. But food security is massive. You know, we need to be talking to our local farmers. We need to be going to the farmers markets. We need to grow it so each of our areas here can have food security for the long term. I want to look into, and I have great ideas around vertical farming, integrating robots into farming. Well, and there's so much opportunity because once you get AI and robots starting to make food, you get a feedback loop that's making it where we are going to be growing more food. I envision a future, and not too far into the future, where we're going to have an overabundance of food. We're going to have an overabundance of electricity. But we can't do that when we are like Pierre Poilievre and looking at the last 10 years. We need to look forward at the next 10 years and understand that we have some very complex problems that we need to solve. And food security, kind of like education, food should not be a hindrance. You know, education needs to be supported. Food needs to be supported. And Mark Carney is the only team with a plan that's actually going to make it where we can address this. So 10 years from now, our communities are going to have more food. We are going to be more educated. We are going to be more empowered to be the individuals
And we
that
need to be the community that when somebody falls, we're going to be able to catch them. Because, and I know this sounds good, but we're not strong unless all of our working parts are strong. So we're not going to succeed. We're not going to grow if we're letting those.
And we need to give the supports to our vulnerable populations, because we are only as strong as our weakest players. We do need to catch the challenges that we have. But here's the big one that I learned in the debate, and I rejected this with a bunch of people because I take this very carefully. I work in the social investment sector right now, and it touches me that people don't, they think they're superior, that the humility, that these aren't people. They don't have hopes and dreams or challenges. They live up on our chin in the air that I am better than these people because I do have a house, or I have a job where I can feed myself, or I don't have the mental illnesses that drive a lot of this behavior, or imbalances of chemicals that can lead to psychosis or things like this. We need to protect our vulnerable populations. We need to understand that these are people. And these people want to get back on, get into a way of life that works for them. And while that may not apply for everybody, they're still humans. They're still Canadians.
So tell me then, like when we look in our community, say directly, I'll look at our community and I'll see more than 10 churches sitting empty, not doing really anything for that sect of the community, where that was a group that we would have relied upon once upon a time. That's a group that we give free taxes to. And that's a problem for me. And I'm really hoping that our Liberal government will start having that conversation, because it's about time. And they're weaponizing it against us.
And that conversation needs to happen at the Member of Parliament level. Where is our Member of Parliament going to these churches and asking them, what philanthropy are you doing? How are you helping here? And maybe they have different ideas. Maybe it was, you know, our membership has dropped significantly, and we had this large expense to replace the heat pump.
Yeah.
And but we don't know. It's not the job of the community to go out there and solve that. It's the job of the Member of Parliament to go and say, hey, what's up? What do you need help with? And how can we make it where you can be more successful in what you're trying to achieve?
How do you feel about churches not paying taxes?
That's a controversial issue in the sense because it's so easy to say that they should be taxed. But from what I know of the churches that I've been involved with, they're not massive organizations with large budgets. You know, I've met seniors that have lived in their houses their whole lives, and city taxes have gone up so much that the house they've lived in for the last 40 years, they have to sell because they can't afford how much the taxes have risen. So I would be very mindful that there are churches that, you know, are doing good things. I'm sure there's churches that are not doing good things too, and we need to identify those as well. Are they actually doing what a church is required in order to have these exemptions? But I do know the answer isn't just put the taxes on there, because that, I would fear, could do more harm than good. But we need to identify and make sure that it's accountable for what is being done. Because if you are saving tens of thousands of dollars because you do have exemptions from the government.
But wouldn't it benefit our government if churches that are bringing in money through different kinds of programs and doing all kinds of things started paying back into Canada and supporting some of these different programs that we have?
There's definitely a comfortable medium. Like if they're
Yeah.
if they're presenting like, you know, something to the public, maybe they get exemptions. But like
Yeah,
if,
I like
if
that.
they're just like leaving vacant lots, vacant land where we could have gardens, where we could have places of nurture and growth, then we can talk. But until you know, like they have sweetheart deals in Ottawa, right down on Elgin Street. There's a famous church that has a 100-year lease at $1 per month. That lease got renewed, I think, like 5 years ago or something like that. You know, like that property is worth tens of thousands of dollars per month. You know, those kinds of exemptions are kind of harmful, I find. I appreciate your time. I'm not going to take up too much because I don't want to hog the live. But like, if Hosang starts talking conspiracy shit, I'm going to kick him.
Thank you. I appreciate you, Abby.
Thank you.
Hosen, we'll give you a minute. Behave.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I disagree with basically everything. Like,
We expected that.
I'm trying to figure out the climate change stuff. Like, it's all naturally occurring. Like Canada is like a carbon negative. Like, we have more trees and forests than anywhere in the world. Like, I genuinely just don't understand any purpose of the carbon tax. Like, there was just no need of it. Like, China and India are polluting so much more. Like, the rest of the world is polluting so much more than us. We're already doing stuff to improve. Like, we have electric, like wind power, solar. Like what was the point of it? Like, it's pretty obvious they just got rid of it because it was such an unpopular part of the election, and they would have got destroyed if they didn't get rid of it. And Carney is just copying all of Pierre's ideas. Housing
This is the
taxes
entertaining
being
section of
removed,
this.
carbon tax, immigration, like everything. Like, it's just moving to the right. So I just don't understand any of that, basically.
So who sung? Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
So you're eating a chocolate bar, right? You had that chocolate bar, you're walking down the street, it's yummy. You got that little piece of garbage and you throw it onto the ground. What happens to that garbage ultimately? Like let's fast forward. If we don't
I would
have
never
city-
do that. I would never throw garbage on the ground.
Okay,
I
but
don't-
would you think that there are people that would do that? Because
maybe
that-
if they're
you
like
have to let
have
me make my point.
issues.
No, you can't interrupt. Thank you.
When that stays in the ground, it potentially is going to be there forever. So same thing happens for carbon. We may not, we as Canada may only contribute, say, 2 to 4% of the global carbon that goes into the world, but we need to lead by example, because when we finished eating our chocolate bar, that wrapper's on the ground, and that wrapper is still going to be on the ground. So even though there are other countries that are throwing even more wrappers onto the ground, we need to make sure that we as a nation, that our people stand up and say, and just like you said, you don't throw the wrapper on the ground. Well, that's good. That's the purpose of the carbon tax, is to make it where we make better choices around the environment. It is a red herring to say, oh, well, the US and China does so much more, so we don't need to do anything. We need to look at it so we minimize the amount of wrappers that are going on the ground. And that's for all pollution, whether it be garbage, recycling, carbon, methane. These are discussions we need to have. But for you to think that it's unimportant because we have a small role, I would say it's better not to have that wrapper on the ground.
Okay, and Casper's here. How are you, Casper?
All right, how you doing?
Ah, thank you. I love your voice. Thank you for coming out tonight.
You say you're out in British Columbia there, right?
We are.
So tell me, what are your thoughts on the RCMP and the government forcibly removing Indigenous people from their traditional homelands because they don't want pipelines going through it, or they don't want their forests being cut down? And how is it you have not even acknowledged First Nations people? Shouldn't they have a seat at the table when it comes to making decisions for the land and the water, given that this is their fucking home? Where's that? Because you're starting to just sound like you're selling yourself. That's all I'm getting from you colonial government people. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I recognize wholeheartedly that the Indigenous are not stakeholders or even key stakeholders. They are rights holders. You know, we are all immigrants on this land. We accept the Indigenous. You know, we all have different stories. Immigration doesn't just mean you come from another country. It could be just moving from Ontario over to British Columbia. But when we have any projects, whether it be, you know, oil or, you know, expansion of corridors or even wildlife corridors or anything like that, we need to invite all the Indigenous to make sure that the voice is being brought up and empowered. And I work currently with the Indigenous locally on social investment issues. And we need to make sure that those groups are empowered for their priorities. So we are working together in tandem for a lot of things that are moving forward. It breaks my heart in the past how colonial and even the systems to today have been infiltrated by colonial measures. So we need to invite yourself, Casper, to the table. We need to make it where any actions that are happening are taken, because you're not, the Indigenous here that are being affected are not stakeholders. They are rights holders, and we need to uphold that to make sure that your rights are being maximized when in any of the discussions that we are having.
I'm not Indigenous, my friend.
Well, for the Indigenous, I'm sorry for the assumption.
Yeah, no, I thought you assumed I'm Indigenous, but just so you know, these people were being forcibly removed while the Liberals were in party, right?
Yeah.
And the RCMP having their pensions invested in the pipelines, you know, that's just straight up wrong. And why is that gone unchecked? And why is it seems to be something that constantly happens? Why is it that law enforcement in this country can do the bare minimum when it comes to Indigenous women that are being stolen, and police do dick? They do the bare minimum if they do anything at all. You've heard of MMIW, I imagine, correct? So why is that continuing to happen? Why is the calls for justice not actually happening? But why is it always some kind of performance when it comes to politicians, where you all say the right things, but you do nothing?
Well, we do need to understand the division of power, and I have talked to people about how the judicial system, which the police are involved, could possibly do for a reform. As far as the member of Legislative Assembly and where I directly am, I would make it where the policies are brought into the Indigenous being brought to the table. But under the judicial system, because we have the executive, we have the houses, and then we have the judicial system. Under the judicial system, yeah, those police need to be held accountable for the, you know, a-holes within the police that do take it too far and, you know, take these Indigenous away from their families or fighting for what they believe in. Totally unacceptable. And we need to strengthen our judicial system to be stronger. But do understand there is a little bit of a division of power here in Canada, and the RCMP specifically are under the judicial. And I would be open to have the discussions for reform to make it where we can address these issues so they don't happen again.
What are the odds of getting the RCMP abolished and getting rid of them entirely? Given their history and why they were created, given what they participated in, stealing children from their homes and being brought to residential schools, or 60 Scoop or birth alerts, or participating in the starvation of Indigenous people, or participating in forcibly removing them from their traditional homelands to be put in isolated areas where they can't have infrastructure, they can't have anything, and they're like literally forgotten. And so why can't we, like, truth and reconciliation? You want reconciliation? Well, how about getting rid of symbols that glorify the individuals that did this to the First Nations people on their land, their home, that accepted our ancestors and taught our ancestors to survive here? Well, when do they get that fucking acknowledgement? When the fuck are steps going to actually really happen? Or is it just going to be continuous performances?
So, Casper, I got a good question for you here. When there is nobody else,
it's not
to
about
call,
me. It's about you answering my question. You're running for office, not me, bro.
Okay, but if there's nobody, if you're in an emergency situation and there's nobody else to call, the RCMP still show up. And there, I would be curious.
When an Indigenous family report their loved one missing, they call the RCMP, and a lot of the times, most of the times, they actually tell them to call back in a week. They're probably out partying. That's a common occurrence, man. How about Indigenous women in the landfills When
I
law
hear
enforcement
that. I
realized
just
they
want
were
to know
there and they
who are we going to
refused to
replace
search the
to have
landfill,
come
they
to
came
that
up with an
as well,
excuse.
because we do need
Please
some
don't
kind of
tell me
Let's
that
enforcement.
the
not let's not
RCMP are
talk
just
over
going to
each
show
other.
up. Let's talk about Rodney Levi, Chantel Moore, wellness check. They shot her 5 times, bro.
So,
Like,
and
and
this
y'all
is
good about it. Y'all just, yeah, man, whatever.
no, Casper, it is really valuable, everything you're bringing up. I mean, I got to tell you, I work with unhoused population, and a question I'll ask myself often when somebody doesn't show up for their room and I know they've shown up and they're Indigenous, do I do a wellness check? Because I don't know if I'm going to hurt them by doing that wellness check on them. I don't know if they're going to be safe. I don't know what the outcome is going to be for their friends and family. And we know that this has happened to Indigenous families across Canada.
And that is something that's important to talk about. I want to know the solutions, so when there's nobody else to call, because we're talking about abolishing the RCMP.
Well, there's no quick solution. So what I think, and I could be wrong, Casper, but when do we start bringing people to the table to start having conversations about a solution?
Sure.
Right? Like this isn't going to be a quick solution, but the Indigenous population should be able to call somebody in an emergent situation and know that they're going to be safe and that the people that are going to walk in that door are going to be safe faces and not scary faces. And we know that's not entirely true. And I'm not even going to pretend to say I have all the answers, but I think these roundtable conversations, we should start having them sooner than later.
That's exactly what needs to happen, is having conversation. And if we do,
But it's not us leading them.
well, your MP should be leading a lot of these conversations, I would think, and your MP doesn't stand up for it. I would stand
The one
up,
we have now, yeah.
I would stand up to have these conversations for sure. I love uncomfortable conversations. I grow from them. I just want to know, if we do something extreme, how can we find other solutions for it? So Casper, you bring up great points, and we, as a nation, we do need to discuss those answers, because it's unfair for people to be in situations where they call the police and wow, things got worse. That
So-
shouldn't be at all.
All right,
It's-
well, I
I'd like-
appreciate you answering my questions. And before I jump out, please remember May 5th, Red Dress Day. Wear red and remember all the stolen sisters and brothers. You know what I'm saying? Enjoy your evening.
Casper, please stick around for a minute because I want you to hear what I have to say too, please.
I'd just like to introduce you, Reggie, to Trudy Sixbirder, and she's one of our beavers, and she is Indigenous, and she will speak for us.
Excellent.
Or speak for everyone.
I'd
Go
love
ahead.
Hi. Thanks. Nice to meet you. I'm sorry I missed you at the beginning. We voted. Yay! We did our civic duty. But I don't disagree at all with what Casper's saying. But one thing we need to be mindful of is the historic relationship that First Nations have with the RCMP. I've been I used to work for the Department of Indian Affairs back when it was Indian Affairs, so it's Indigenous Services now, and we would go out and do treaty pay, and that's a very ceremonial day, right? When you go out and you pay treaty to everybody in the First Nation, the RCMP always join us. They come in their reds. They come and be part of the event. It's a very ceremonial event. They also attend the powwows. So we have to be cautious because there are some First Nations who in some way honor that old relationship because it's very critical to the history of how First Nations were treated. And there are some good RCMP. Like I do have a friend who worked in the nation that I worked in, and she is actually a non-Indigenous woman that married in pre-1985, so she has her status. But she grew up in Manitoba, and her father was an RCMP who was responsible for going out onto reserve and conducting the 60 scoop. But he was the type of RCMP that would go knock on the door and say, "Hey, are the kids home?" And when the parents would say, "Nope," he'd be like, "Okay, great," and he'd leave. And he wouldn't scoop those kids, right? Because he had a heart and he knew. So it's there needs to be an overhaul in RCMP, 100%. There needs to be repercussions for the behaviors that have happened recently in the last 100 years, but very recently we've had in the last few years we've had a lot of incidents, right, with wellness checks. The young man that was shot and killed in Wetaskiwin here, the fellow that was killed in Calgary. So all of that those things cannot be ignored, and we do need to address it. But it's systemic within the RCMP, and I think the RCMP need to, number one, be careful who they're recruiting, and then also make sure that they get deep cultural awareness training, and stop sending the rookies out to the res, because that's what happens a lot, is those rookies who are straight out of depot in Regina with their big boy attitudes come out onto the res and think they're going to start pushing people around because they're going to start cleaning some things up. And they learn real quick that that's not the way it goes. But so it's reform. We really need reform. And I know a lot of Indigenous people that are RCMP, that have joined the force. So
Yeah.
it's possible to change it, but we just have to be very mindful in how we're doing these things and addressing these issues and implementing the change. And it has to be done in deep consultation with the First Nations, the Métis, and the Inuit of this land.
100%, and protect the encroachment of the poor behavior that comes out of the United States. Imagine if that starts sneaking in, and how that will affect the RCMP as well. It's very dangerous. I agree. Thank you, Treaty 6 Bird. You brought up great points there.
Yeah, thank you. No worries. I'll stay up for a minute and keep
Please,
listening.
and thank you, Casper, for bringing up these conversations because they're so important.
They are.
Yes,
Uncomfortable conversations are important to have.
Absolutely. And I truly appreciate, Casper. You are one of the best allies I've ever seen in my time on this app. And
I'm just
I
a
just
person
wanna-
that gives a shit. That's all I am. I'm just a person that gives a shit, and I recognize that we can't live in a bubble, and that we have to look out for communities around us instead of just looking out for our circles. Maybe you can do something about our education system and start teaching our children about empathy and compassion and acceptance, and learning to look out for everyone around them instead of teaching them to look out just for themselves. Because that's what our system does. Get the best grades, get in the best school, get the best job, get the big house, get the nice car, the fancy clothes, right? Get all that. That's what we're teaching them. We should be teaching them the truth and teaching them about looking out for everybody instead of just themselves. But I leave on that note. Treaty 6, I appreciate you, sister.
yes,
Keep
you
doing
too,
what y'all
likewise,
do,
brother.
everybody. Peace out.
Yeah, and back and kind of jumping off of what Casper was saying. If we taught kids the basics of the 7 sacred teachings, that that was a foundation of values within our schools as an act of reconciliation, we could maybe some kids would start to see things differently, even if their home life isn't the same. Like even where I live, I don't know, Mrs. Radical, if you saw the video I made about the dirt bikers in my neighborhood.
I did. That was wild.
And like today too, they were out here like that, and I feel like they're doing it on purpose to harass me. But like these kids have no empathy or respect for neighbors, and it's based on like just what Casper was saying, because they're very entitled now. I don't know what happened to kids that they lost all their values. But anyways, I feel like I'm digressing. But
it's just because so don't you remember when you were a kid and if your parents gave you permission to act like a shit, you might, you know what I mean? But
yeah,
but if you were told no way, that's not gonna fly, I'm coming for you if you do that, you had a boundary in place and you knew you couldn't cross that boundary.
Yeah.
But when you see kids behaving the way they were behaving towards you on those motorcycles and on your land and in your property, someone told them that was okay.
oh yeah, absolutely. Like these kids are really entitled. Like I know what kind of parents they have. These kids are probably taught, you're a man, you got your rights, you can do what you want to, and you know what I mean? And you just, who cares what anybody else thinks? Because like these kids have honestly come, this was another group of kids, but they're all hang out together. They sat outside my fence line and revved their bikes until I cried one time. Like 10 meters from my deck. Like how, but you know what I feel like for these poor kids is it's pitiful. How ugly they must feel inside, and they're going to grow up to be assholes and nobody's going to like them.
Yeah.
Something to this real quick.
Yeah.
Just because I know that Casper was talking about the fact that we need to teach this in schools, and I totally agree. We definitely should be doing a lot more in our schools, but I do know personally a lot of really good teachers. What?
Oh, sorry, we were just talking about my son in the background.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I do know a lot of good teachers that try really, really hard to teach the kids empathy and compassion. And as you said, a lot of the problems come from the parents. But what really, I think, is the biggest problem that's led to our entire society, and again, globally, this is not just a Canadian issue. It is specifically even more so an American issue. But American media took over the world back in the 80s and 90s. And it started driving this, I call it like capitalistic marketing, because they wanted to get everybody to want to be the cool kids, right? That's what was marketed. It's like you had to be the popular kids. And if you look at the conservatives of today, they're basically the popular kids from high school that never grew up, because all they care about is to be the cool ones, to be the tough ones, to be, the ones that never get made fun of. So they become very individualistic, but it's American media that started teaching the world to be that way. If you look at other types of media, like I like to watch foreign movies and foreign films all the time, and they are different. And American media is starting to change too, but especially back in the 90s, it was really pushed onto people that you needed to have the designer bags and be the cool kid and have the most expensive car and go to all the parties and be, the ladies' man and, be the popular girl. And you really got that pushed onto you, and it created an entire generation of people who are now having kids, and they're teaching that to their children. And we're seeing the results of all of that kind of Hollywood capitalistic marketing in people's behaviors today. So I think it goes a lot deeper than just school. It has a lot to do with the media that we have been consuming since the 80s, really.
Well, and the lessons that we've been teaching kids as well. I had a great conversation the other day of how we should be teaching our kids to grow food, and that it's natural to take food from a garden and, support yourselves. And, the Liberal government, we have a program where we want to bring food into schools, because when you're not hungry, you learn better. And so we've put over $1 billion into that over the last 3 years of a 5-year program. So we need to really get back down to these root causes of understanding it, and don't let that, American exceptionalism, overtake our media, and because children consume a lot of it. These are real problems that we need to address.
Okay, now that you're back on the food topic, I have to chime in again because I heard you speaking about food and the robotics and things like that.
Yep, yay! Sorry. Those were gifts.
Woo-hoo. And while I have the ear of somebody who has the ear of others, I've seen data that shows that there's 25 years of accessible water left in Canada.
That hurts my heart when I ever hear you say that. It stops me in the tracks.
And I know people always say no, but you have to remember we can't run every river and stream and lake dry. You have to keep water in the system. And so if you're writing it down, there's a professor at McMaster University called Dawn Martin Hill. She's done the Water Futures work. So I don't have access to her papers, but I'm very, very scared about water. And we can't grow food without water.
Well, we were talking about climate change earlier and all the glaciers that have melted and how that's going to be affecting reservoirs. Look at Calgary and like the Bow River.
Yeah, the Old Man River last year, the Old Man Reservoir was dry. The intake was above the water level. And so I'm a biologist, so I've worked in environmental protection for 28 years. And so 300 meters, the glaciers have been receding a year, when on average the last 5 years, it was 30 meters a year. Alberta is in some serious trouble.
Yeah.
And I know you probably know too, right? We have to ensure that 51% of the water that leaves this province makes it into Saskatchewan. So the water basin in southern Alberta is over-allocated. So now on paper, they're transferring water from one basin to the next. So from the Red Deer River into the South Saskatchewan River Basin, which is just on paper. So the government of Alberta is doing some crazy things when it comes to water licensing, water allocations. And I really think that the feds need to find a way to step in. I know the NRTA is constitutional and it's really challenging for us to try to change the Natural Resources Transfer Act. I talked to Mark Miller about this at one point in time. I was at convention in Ottawa in 23. So I went and spoke to as many people as I could, but I don't know what we're going to do and how are we going to make this a critical issue so that Mr. Carney can address this too when he's our leader.
Well, I can tell you as MP, this is something I want to take very seriously. And I love reading. I love research. That name you gave me was Dawn Martin Hill, the research.
Hill, yep. I'm pretty sure that's her name. She's a professor at McMaster. She's an Indigenous woman too. And most of her research is related to Indigenous health, but I think she branched off into water. It's somehow related to that. But I only got to talk to her briefly at a conference. And so I didn't get a lot of information. And her papers, you have to pay to get them. And I just don't have that kind of money right now to access papers from universities.
And this is important of why we want to, like I brought up with my portal idea, and bring people to the table, because I never would have known about Dawn Martin Hill had you not brought this up, Treaty 6. So this is why these ideas of communication are so important. So I, as your MP, can be as educated on something like this as possible. And when it comes to research papers, I've even done this in the past. Phone up the author themselves, since that they own the work, and get them to send it to you, because sometimes you're paying like $30 to $150 for these research papers, and it doesn't go to the researcher.
No, it doesn't. And I have reached out to her on LinkedIn, but she's not responded. So, if you can find it, great. I also have somebody else who's going to try to look for me too. And if I find it, I'll get it to Mrs. Radical, or I can find it.
I can forward it, yeah.
And because this is critical, and I hope it's wrong. I really pray that it's wrong, but we better look into it and make sure that it's not.
I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow, such important conversations, hey?
Well, and this is what the MP needs to do, not just during an election. We need to be doing this all 4 years. We need to have energy. We need to have discourse. We need to make it where people are not so far away from Ottawa.
Yeah. Oh my God. Our MP is Mike Lake, and we went to one of his roundtables. Tell you what a room that was. Conservatives in rural central Alberta. It was an interesting discussion, I tell you. There were people in that room claiming that all the Liberals are being paid by drug cartels and things like this. And I was just like, wow. And Mike Lake did not do much to deny it. He did kind of, well, no, not everybody. It was his answer. So he didn't say not no one, but not everybody. And then Mike Lake tokenized Billy Morin, because I was the Indigenous person around that table, and he looks at me and, oh yeah, Billy Morin's running for us in the election. Well, that doesn't mean anything to me. Anyways, I don't want to take us off topic, but
that seems very common, or more common than it should be, I should say.
And so, I agree with you. It's really important that we engage with our MPs, if we voted for them or not. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's even more important when we didn't vote for them, because I want to make sure that, I'm watching you, and I know that you represent me in that House of Commons, regardless of whether or not I voted for you, because that's what my neighbors voted for. So he was he's like, kind of laughed at me later. He's like, I can tell I'm going to be seeing more of you. I'm like, absolutely.
Well, and something that's really neat to think about the Liberal Party is, under the contract that I signed to represent them, the only policies that I have to vote in favor of are confidence motions. When it comes to other things that relate directly to the riding, you don't have to vote in favor with the government. There is a whip, but you don't have to overcome, you don't have to listen to the whip. And I would make sure, for important issues of what we're talking about here, that we're standing up for the riding. Whether you voted for me or not, or anything, I'm here for everyone in the constituency. And you want me to stand up for something, I want to bring you to the table. I want to talk about it, and not just during an election.
That's awesome. Treaty, Liam wants everybody to try the gingerbread filter. It would kind of look cool if you were all gingerbreads. Pixie Lee.
Yeah, I just want to try
Hi, Reggie. It's nice to have you on Beaver Network. I just wanted to pipe in and say that I've tried and attempted to get a meeting with our Mr. Morrison, and he's the only MP that I've ever sat in his office that asked for questions prior to my meeting. So I had to send them a list of questions, and then they didn't ever reschedule my meeting. So. Yeah, I'm not kidding you. So that was my first and I attempted to reach out to him a few times under my own Gmail, and it wasn't until I actually sent him from my Kootenai Columbia Liberal Writing Association email that he actually responded. And it wasn't him; it was his secretary. But yeah, then they wanted questions prior to me going, and then I never did get a meeting with him.
And that's just unacceptable on so many
But I
ends.
mean, like we've brought up several times, Reggie. Like in the last 6 years, what has he done for the East Kootenai? He doesn't even live in our riding. He lives outside our riding, and then he's been parachuted in and done absolutely nothing for our area. So again, I just want to also say, as I'm quickly here, because I'm just closing off, I'm at work, but tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in front of our office, I'd like everybody to meet us there. We're going to have a Vote Reggie rally and a Never 51 Standing Strong, Canada Strong. And we're going to go stand by the elephant on front, because we can't stand too close to the Prestige, but we can stand by the elephant, or people are going down to the Prestige to advance vote. So if anybody's in the area, please meet me at the local office, which is at 911 Baker Street in downtown Cranbrook. I'll be there for 10 o'clock. Thanks.
I'll join you there for sure.
That's cool. That's a great idea.
Wow. I couldn't imagine contacting your member of parliament and them not trying to get back to you. And we want your questions before.
It's kind of been a conservative thing for, I would say, the past, for sure, 8 years. Like when I lived in Alberta, if I emailed...
I lived in Alberta, and I've sat in several...
You're interrupting me.
I know. I do it all the time. Get used to it.
I know. Stop.
I've sat in several
I've got
offices.
the power. Watch that. Watch that. Isn't that impressive?
Jeez.
And anyways, they delete you and block you on Facebook.
Really?
And they do it here all the time to me. And now Pixie will finish talking. Go ahead, Pixie. You can unmute yourself. If I touch it, it'll make you mute longer. She'll pop in a
Sorry.
second.
I'm always a little bit over passionate, but again, I've sat in several MPs' offices, especially in Alberta, because when we were going to do the legalization project that we won, I had to sit in several offices, and I was never once asked for questions prior to. And that was Rick Casson. That was Stephen Harper's office in Calgary. We were never asked for questions prior to going. And we actually sat in Stephen Harper. Well, I wasn't there myself personally, but we sat and did a sit-in Stephen Harper's office in Calgary, because that's where his constituency was. And a whole group of people sat in his office, and it was something else.
I used to live in his riding.
Again, he never asked for questions prior to anybody coming. Even Stephen Harper didn't ask for that. But Rob Morrison did.
Well, and think of what can happen what's happening in the States if we were to be annexed in any way, how much that would get even worse. We need to promote your voice, not stifle it.
Treaty's just asking a question, so I'm going to answer it. Treaty, there's 3 dots in the bottom in the corner on the left-hand side, and it says more. Click on that, and it's going to take you to your... Can anybody tell Treaty how to change her face to a gingerbread man?
You just have to click on your box, and then it'll pop up with your little face on it, and right at the bottom it should say effects. And if you go down to effects, you can click whatever effect you want. If the gingerbread one is not readily available right there, then you just scroll to the very end of the list, and there's a little up arrow. You click on that, and it'll open up all the other effects.
I love it.
Now we need you, Treaty. I love that. We'd be more like Puerto Rico. Thanks, Panda. Oh, we can't get one because we have a background. We can't, unfortunately.
That's okay.
I could make Reggie a cookie tomorrow night. I'll figure out a way for Reggie and Radical to be cookies. And actually, I forgot to tell you guys, tomorrow night, Reggie's going to be here on Radicalized, and they're going to have a fireside chat. So that'll be pretty cool, I think. Oh, Pixie Lee, you look sad now. It's always sad. Try hard. You gotta smile. You gotta use
I'm
those
going to come
muscles.
too. So like I said, I'm hoping that fireside chat lasts. I don't normally work Fridays and Saturdays, but I'm here at the store right now, and I wish I was there with you guys. Anyway,
Well, we wish you were
that's
too.
why I
It's
am
not the same
Scottish.
without you.
What a fun platform. What a great way to engage people. This is phenomenal what everyone here is doing. Good for you.
Beaver Politics is a group of creators across TikTok that we found that produce real, relevant, original content, and they fact check it, right?
Yeah.
And so we platform them so we can get the information out, because like on a lot of tricky platforms, we end up getting blocked. We end up getting our
Yeah.
voices taken away. So this is a way to platform each other and work with each other.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll create enough money or get enough money in this movement that maybe we can put it to uplift a politician or a program,
programs for sure,
you know, we
yeah.
want to make change. That's kind of where we are, is we're change creators. That's what we're working towards.
Well, it's really impressive, and I'm really like we've talked about a real broad amount of subjects, and all of them important. And so it's great that you guys have
These
such a
people will
platform to
keep
do
you
this.
on your toes. There's these people, these boxes will fill up. Last night, Frontline, what was we at 200 last night in the box?
And how many viewers we had, because we can't bring up 200 people, but the boxes are filled. We can bring up as much as 8 people, but there was at one point where we hit 200 views last night.
Wow, and that's, you can just take 8 people from that, have an ongoing discussion point. Like, that is really effective.
Yeah.
This is the future of, politics and discussion, because look at what you can talk about and invite people in. I love this. Thank you for all the work everyone here does and puts towards it. Really good job.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
We appreciate it.
I'm really impressed.
We appreciate it. Do you want to save a little bit more for tomorrow night? Save your...
Yeah, well, why don't we go for, say, another 10 minutes? I'm really enjoying
Sounds
myself.
good.
I really
Okay,
am.
awesome. Does anyone have any other questions for Reggie? We could keep it about our area, or it won't let you do.
I can open up for a broader question.
Yeah.
So, as you guys probably already know, the Trump administration is trying to use the tariffs and, quote unquote trade deals to pressure other countries to do what they want them to do. Like, for example, right now, JD Vance is trying to use a trade deal to get the UK to end its LGBTQ plus hate speech protections. So they're saying, like, we'll go easy on you and we'll give you this good trade deal if you take away your protections for hate speech for this group of people. What is the Liberal government in Canada going to do to make sure that they do not capitulate to any sort of crazy trade deal that would take away some of our rights that we do have? Because the UK actually, is very similar in terms of their parliament and how they run their government to Canada. We have a lot of similarities there. And for example, 2 days ago, they just changed the trans people laws. So a trans woman is now technically not, you can't call them a woman anymore under UK laws. And that's scary because they have the Labour Party in UK, I think, is it a conservative? No, it's not a conservative party. It's a more like center party.
Yeah.
So that's scary.
This is something I do need to learn more about myself, but I can tell you unequivocally, all the nations of the world need to diversify themselves away from the United States. Their toxic culture that's being led from their government, that is permeated into the many circles that we have, needs to be addressed. So in Canada, we're bringing down the interprovincial barriers so we can grow across Canada, but the rest of the world as well. We need to not be reliant on the States.
Liberal tears.
Hit them where it hurts, because realistically, monies and stock markets, they all rely on us spending money with the United States. Cheers.
Yeah.
And we need to make it where we work together, where we have agreements. Like there's the one for the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand that's being looked at right now. These are the kind of things that we can do to protect ourselves, so we don't have this negative the negative parts of the American culture bleed over. And if they are starting to use that to infiltrate and break down securities for individuals, that needs to be looked at. Again, I don't have the answers and I'd love to research more, but I do know nationally, like all of our countries, need to diversify away from the United States and this government.
Can I ask a question? It's kind of related to this, like, because it's connected to our sovereignty. I feel like we need more information from our government leaders. Like, I'm always kind of wondering what's going on. Do I need to be prepared for something? Should we, like, I know that there's a fine line, right? We don't want to get people freaking out and, right? Like, it's a challenging question to ask and a challenging question to answer. But I feel like I'm wandering through life right now, not knowing what to expect next, and wishing that I got a little more information or direction from our government to say this is where we're, where we see things are headed globally, war-wise, potentially. Our sovereignty, is somebody coming after our Arctic? Like all of like. And we see it and we hear it on social media, but we're not hearing it from our leaders. And I wish we did hear it once in a while. Like, this is what we know is happening and this is what we're doing to protect our country, so that we feel that assurance instead of wandering around in a fog.
Yeah, that's a good point. And think of all the other people that have the similar points of view as well. And I want to see a connected Canada. I want to see a united Canada. I want to see us strong and proud, but so much trust has been eroded. And so rebuilding that trust, I think we have to get back to the constituency level. And, 65% of the Liberals that are being elected in this election are new candidates. We are the next generation of the Liberal Party, and we want to communicate. We want to bring discussions to the forefront. We don't live in isolation. We have 5 different websites that the federal government, there's more than 5, but 5 that are predominantly used by someone like myself. Let's put that information together. Let's make it riding specific. Let's make it where the entitlements that each of us have, we can know about, and make it where it's accessible. These are the kind of conversations that need to be driven by the Member of Parliament. And when our Member of Parliament is conservative, they care about playing politics, and we don't need to play politics. We need to understand that there are people who have lives that need to be supported, and the government needs to be there for them.
And we don't want necessarily a parent-child relationship. We know, I guess I feel like I'm speaking on behalf of the people, but we know that we need the government to help guide us. That's very important. But we need the government to start empowering us. Mm-hmm. Empowering us so that when those right choices come, we have enough information.
And I will
that
fight.
We can, we can be that wall of strength.
And I will fight so hard to make sure that happens. I'm so passionate. I've wanted to be a Member of Parliament since I was 5 years old. And I've tried to take my whole life to understand how we can do it as effectively as possible. Mm-hmm. And I want to bring that to the forefront 100%. Yeah.
Any other questions? Hi, Jazzy. How are you?
I'm good. How's your night going?
Good. Thanks for joining us.
Just one sec. I have a statement kind of to go with talking. I'm sorry, I'm going back to it because it drives me crazy. I think, I could be wrong. I don't know if you guys were watching the news today, but the U.S. has pretty much given us very strong warning about Ukraine, that they're going to pull out in the next coming days if they don't have a ceasefire. And I don't think that that's going to happen. So it will be very interesting to see what happens if that does happen. And you're going to have to see Mark Carney's going to have to step up again, because all leaders in the European Union, everybody will have to come to play. That will rattle a lot if that happens. So again, that's where your security clearance comes into play right now. And he will not be getting any of that information. And I guess my other question, which I've spoken to to you guys about this before. What are you guys doing on the youth level of voting? It's so important to me. Like, is there any, like, I know you go, I see, where you go to a trade, maybe it is trade colleges, maybe I'm missing something when you go, or go to universities. Has there been any of that in a case like, because I find I was very involved, not very involved, but I had a good insight into the US election. And I've mentioned this before. I was absolutely mind blown about the number of pink Trump flags that were in dorm rooms of girls. Pink, purple, teal, light green. They were color coordinating their rooms around these flags. Mind blown. And I really, really feel that's our silent voters right there. That generation. And the boys are the same. And when I left that, it was in mid-August. I looked at my husband and I was like, Trump's getting in. He's like, no way. I'm like, yep. I was like, and that's who's going to put him in. And when they do the breakdown, like, they're a pretty big chunk. And like, these are pretty big. This was a pretty good school where I thought people would be smarter, but I've lost I don't know. But honestly, I do think a lot of them, I shouldn't say them, that sounds, a lot of the people that voted, it was a one issue vote. And everybody said, this will never happen, it'll never happen. And by the way, I've started watching The Handmaid's Tale. Thanks a lot, Frontline.
You have to. It's so important.
Sorry.
No, I am watching it. Oh my, no, I'm terrified.
It is. Take lots of breaks, drink, you know what I mean? And go away and remind yourself that it's not at this moment happening.
But
And
it's
it's terrifying.
What's happening?
They used it as the playbook for Project 2025. My husband will often say to me, we've got Handmaid's Tale verging into the Hunger Games out there.
Oh, I can't even believe how much it's like. Tonight my husband was like, what are you saying? And I'm like, I'm just talking to my iPad. Because there's so much stuff happening. I'm like, oh my God. But yeah, I guess with only 10 days left of the election, what have you done? I guess I'm just looking for some hope here, because I find on TikTok any of the posts that are pro-PP, the number of likes far exceed. And I don't know if there's ways that they're boosting their posts, and I am jaded based on the US election, because I didn't think prior to going and seeing all those flags that that's how it was going to happen. So yeah, I'm just wondering if, are you getting any youth data back?
Yeah, so Jazzy, 2 days ago, I went to the Jaffrey High School. Their school is all together, but I talked to their grade 9 students. They're not old enough to vote. However, I got to speak to them about politics, and pretty much everyone in the room had never had a proper conversation about politics before. So it's easy to go onto TikTok and, watch these videos that speak about politics, and, they spread this hate or this real extreme right-wing rhetoric. What I found, and what really gave me hope after talking to those students, is they were happy to have a perspective of politics that wasn't hate. We talked about the division of powers. We talked about how they can get involved and how their voice matters. So going back to what we were saying earlier and teaching kids how to, grow their own food, and that it's normal to eat from a garden. I think communication with the kids at a young age being high school age, to let them know politics isn't the division that we see on social media. Politics is, we've referred to it as a blood sport. It's not a blood sport. It is a team sport. And what we need are the right leaders to come in, raise their hand, asking the right questions, making sure that the right information is being promoted. And for our riding particularly, I think including the kids in the discussion of how we do this portal. Kids are talking about modern things like AI technology and how they are interacting with it. Let's bring them to the table.
One of the things I notice in our community, And I say that loosely because we don't have a community center. We have churches and we have all of these different things, but we have no community center. And I say that to address kind of, or to touch on Jazzy's point, because I see these kids and these young men, and what I'm noticing is they left school, they went to charter schools, and they went to churches, and they got educated, and this is the other end that they're coming out of. This is what we see with little support and not the right kind of education, and not, so what do we do to tap in ours? That's why I kind of brought up the community piece, because I think in our little neck of the woods, we don't have a community center. And when I think of community center, I mean, I don't know about anybody else, but a community center to me is some skating rinks, a building where youth programs are, where children's programs are, where there's a drop-in center, where there's seniors programs, where people are connecting together and having those classes and learning those things. We don't have that in our space.
Yeah.
And I challenge TikTok creators and leftists out there to get out there and start going to Big Brothers and Big Sisters and joining the mentoring program, because they do have a mentoring program and they will vet you, and you can get into the schools and help support, and getting into your community centers and getting out there, because those people they played the long game. And I think that's something we need to be considering too, to kind of combat some of this.
Yeah, I firmly believe that the majority of people that are voting and for PP, actually, I'll say this first. I think there's a big problem with people understanding that there is a conservative policy and then a conservative constitution. And for someone who has family members in a marginalized group, I am very, very, to me, human rights comes first and foremost in a government, and then you build from there. If you elect a person that puts human rights, the rest will come. That's just my own stance, and I really don't care if anyone else believes it. But
I don't want to interrupt, Jazzy, but we are people. We were talking about vulnerable populations earlier, and nobody is superior to those people. Some of the best people I've met have been poor or been in not an ideal situation. So no, we 100% need that humility element brought back into politics, and, reach out to our youth and let them know that, we need to get you the right sources of information, because if you're not taught things about politics or even how to do your taxes, it's an unknown.
If I didn't think Mark Carney had shared any of those values, I wouldn't be on here. It wouldn't happen. That's the first thing for me. I think it's an absolute shame that they put him in a position the other night. Rebel News did in front of the camera. People may disagree with me on this, but I think they set him up.
Yeah.
And his answer, I think, was to protect his child. And I would do the same for his day. And not even think twice about it. They set him up. They've attacked his child numerous times. I've seen it, and I've wanted to. Oh, I can't even go there. Yeah. But yeah, that was not fun the other night. That just spoke to the smirk on his face when he asked him that. He was like, "Well, you're not going to like this question." I'm like, that really hit too close to home.
But I was so happy that he canceled the scrubs, because in my head, that's what I kept thinking about Justin Trudeau, is that was his almost like, if there was only one, like in my eyes, there's only one fault of Justin Trudeau. I'm a big fan of Justin Trudeau, but just that he allowed them to come to life so easily and allowed them to exist. And I think that's where, we don't want to be dictators, but in some ways I'm like, maybe you need to use those powers to quash them, right?
But why were they there?
Because they
For who,
basically,
though?
okay, first of all, I think the people that were doing the debate were maybe more right leaning than left leaning, but they also had, I believe, a court order, or they had threatened a lawsuit of some sort.
But were they involved somehow in? Actually, I'm not going to say because I don't know if I can. I'm just wondering. I'm sure they didn't all support every leader.
I know that I've seen videos circulating on TikTok that Pierre Polyev and Ezra Levant have a very close, tight relationship
Bingo.
that people saw existing as long ago as the convoy.
See, that needs to be out there. Some people may not care. The younger, that his base will not care. Let's just face it. His base is his base. It's not going anywhere. It's similar to the South. They can do whatever they want. It's just never going to change. Like the debate last night, I think he was speaking to not his base. So, with the tears at the end. But, yeah, I don't know. I've lost my train of thought, guys. Sorry. I've been like thinking nothing politics for the last. I'm sure you feel the same way, but the next 10 days can't come fast.
Jazzy, I can really sense your passion, and you know it's good that you've come and brought up these points, because these are the conversations that we do need to have. So good for you for stepping up and asking these questions. And
I should, full disclosure though, I'm not in your riding.
That's
I'm in
okay.
a very, 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 very liberal province. And I don't have, I do have to worry about those things, but mostly, you know, we deal with those on a family level. But politically, it's getting a little bit more decisive here. But we've been very blessed to have, I don't want to say his name because that will say where I am. But we've had pride flags taken down and burned. I actually reached out and he immediately had one sent to my house to put back up in the school. So we have had full. And to me, the reason I did that is I drove by the school one morning, and I saw all the kids coloring a rainbow crosswalk and putting up the flag, so it was a whole day. And then I noticed it was gone on Sunday. And I'm thinking, these kids are going to go back to school and see something that they celebrated, and it's gone. I was like, no way. If I have to go put that back up myself, I will get I'm doing it. But anyways, no, I reached out to our MP, and he honestly sent one overnight. Nice. And it was put up, but the kids didn't have to get off the school bus and be like, what happened? So, yeah. So I've definitely been advocating for stuff, but I'm probably the only political person in my family, actually. But
that's a hard spot to be in. Thanks for doing the work. We really appreciate you.
But they're not political, but they will vote because they know that's on the line for loved ones the right way.
Yeah.
But speaking of kids, I actually have one right now who is texting me. So I'm going to go talk to them. But I want to thank you guys so much. And Frontline, awesome seeing you like that.
She's the best.
You should see all the screenshots I have from JB's live last night. Oh my God.
I want to see Frontline's like little cookie have a couple tattoos on the side of it though. I think that would just like, yes.
I have Pierre with a duck on his head. It's awesome. And then Kearney with sunglasses and a cowboy hat. It's perfect. Nice. I'm going to make my profile picture maybe.
I love it.
Okay. Have a good night, guys.
Take care, my friend.
Thank you.
Can I?
No, please.
So can I just share one little piece of news that came out with you guys?
Yeah.
So there was a new Nanos research polling that asked Canadians whether they feel safe in their neighborhood. And these are the results. So the majority of Canadians feel as safe or safer in their neighborhoods than they did 10 years ago, according to the latest public issues from Nano's research. Basically, though, they said that the only people that said that they didn't feel safe anymore were people that were also conservative. And I just... It's just odd, right? Like, it's just odd that the polling is so, if you look at the numbers and you look at the charts, it is very obvious that it's pretty much just conservative voters that say that they don't feel safe anymore. And I'm really wondering, do they not feel safe because of the propaganda they've been reading about? Or do they not feel safe because they actually don't feel safe? It's an odd one, right? Because PP has been campaigning for the last 3 years on how there's a big crime wave and we're broken and there's so much crime, and, you know, very similar to exactly what Trump did in the United States, pretty much the exact same words. But yeah, those are the only people that don't really feel safe anymore. I find that strange, don't you?
Well, I mean, it was a couple of years ago I watched after Trump lost, and Fox didn't really have much to air that night. So they all took a tree out to the middle of the square. They lit it on fire. And then they had a big thing about how the liberals or the Democrats stole Christmas.
Oh, jeez.
Right? And it's that rage media where everybody should be scared of somebody.
Yeah.
They've all have a cousin named Mustafa that they've talked about, and Mustafa feels uncomfortable and can't, you know what I mean? There's no actual facts they bring to the conversation, but they bring a lot of fear and they take away confidence and they give a lot of doubt.
Well, they want you to be fearful. Look at our seniors, and you know the world is just this terrible
crumbling
place. There's a lot of good that's happening. I mean, Hemingway, I think it was, with you know, it is the best of times and it is the worst of times. You know, never have things ever been so good. But on the flip side, you know, they're also quite bad.
Yeah.
But no, we don't want to live in that state of fear. Let's reject that, and let's and let's live in a society where we're happy. And if there are problems, we can address them. I would love to be an MP to spearhead that.
Bentley R. Radical is in the house.
Bentley R. Radical, I love it. I love it. That's great.
He's a little wily. Okay, you go back. Go play with Dad.
No, I reject the living in the state of fear, because that's just a political ploy to try and, you know, stifle the vote or encourage people not to vote. But you know, our strength comes in numbers. Our strength comes from communication, and exactly what we're doing here, or what you're doing here on the Beaver Network, is what we do to address that fear. So again, to the organizers, to our host, to everyone that's involved, these are the conversations that need to be happening.
Thank you so much.
And also maybe Reggie, maybe you can help me and help me figure out what steps I need to take so that I can get more involved in politics and potentially run for an MP one day. So I'd love.
Yeah, well, and the people that want,
I'd love.
Empower them. You should be an MP. Work through the challenges.
Both
Fight
of
the
you.
Stigma.
Yeah.
Fight the stigma. If you want any help there, frontline, I would be happy to loan you any of the resources that I use, help you navigate the challenges of actually getting it done. But if that is something you seriously want to do, I'd be happy to help you.
I'll connect you two.
Sure.
Thank you. That's what I was going to say. Please connect us. I would really appreciate it.
And if we're back here tomorrow, which I'm very excited to be, maybe this might be a good time for me to excuse myself and...
Yeah. So I don't know. On that note, I'm kind of, what do you think, Frontline? Are you ready to be done at this point?
Totally.
Yeah. It was a long night yesterday. We were in 5 hours last night with the debate. And I just thank everyone for showing up every night to the Beaver Network and having these really, really hard conversations. So I appreciate you all so much for doing the work with us and sitting through this and trying to figure these hard conversations out. Have a good night. Thanks.
Have a good night, guys. Thank you so much for everything. Reggie, you're awesome. It was so nice getting to know you tonight, and hopefully I'll make a little bit of time to jump on tomorrow's live as well and hear you some more.
Please do. I'd love to be part of it. And I really thank you, everyone, for your presence here tonight and allowing me to be part of that as well. I'm very encouraged to do the best job that I can. I really, really am.
Night, everyone. It was nice chatting with you, Reggie.
Good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night,
Thank you,
sweetie.
everyone. Bye bye.
Have a good night.